Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 457. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, Dr. Norge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim. Don't mess with my Rip Hunter. So says the sensei of the Whatnot Segulin, the Duke of You-Know, and the elder statesman of the podcast.
How's it going, eh?
Jim, before we get started, I want to shout out that we recently had the opportunity to guest on Comic Timing, episode 176. It's a nice chance to chat and catch up again with both Ian and Brent. We have a long, rich history with them, and they're celebrating 10 years in podcasting this year, like we are. So I wanted to shout them out and let you know to please check out that episode for our guest spot on there. We talk about our thoughts on 2015. So it was a nice kind of wrap-up show on all the cool things that happened in 2015. So it was nice to have the opportunity to guest on there. On this episode, we are going to talk about the big DC Rebirth news that we've heard about this week and our thoughts and speculation on what that might mean, what we're leery about, what we aren't, have a little debate about that, which is always friendly and fun. We do talk about the most recent issue of Batman number 48, and the big events that happened in that issue. We begin a first of a two-part look at DC television. And on this episode, we are going to cover the brand new series Lucifer. We're going to talk about Supergirl and the new series Legends of Tomorrow. We will finish the rest of them on our next episode. Jim, we are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network, the League of Comic Book Podcasts, and the InfiniteComics.com podcast partnership. On this episode, we are sponsored, of course, by DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. At DCBService.com, it is that time of the month where we begin shifting over, and Jim, for you, that means that we'll have new what?
Bundles, bundles, bundles!
So it's a great time to be paying attention this week to what kind of new deals that DCBService.com is going to be offering to you. I want to remind you that they are a digital partner. So if you are buying any issues from the digital store at Comixology, make sure to connect that account to your DCB service account. They also have mydigitalcomics.com. You earn 5% of those purchases towards your DCB service order. It adds up fast because I do a lot of the digital firsts. And just by buying those, I'm always getting a sizable amount each month off of my DCB service order from those digital first issues. Over at their sister site, InStockTrades.com, they've always got these really cool deals of the week. This one in particular, Batman by Ed Brubaker, trade paperback volume 1, is 50% off, only $9.99. Supergirl trade paperback volume 1, this is 50% off, only $8.49. And this one actually goes back to the Jeff Loeb series. It's the Girl of Steel volume. Superman Secret Identity Deluxe Edition hardcovers, 50% off, only $14.99. Just because the movie's coming out and it looks super cool, Deadpool Classic Omnibus hardcover volume 1 is their top seller this week. It's 42% off, only $72.50. I'm a big fan of omnibus editions. So if you haven't had a chance to grab that, that's definitely one that you're going to want to check out. But remember that InStockTrades.com is your collected edition source. Mr. Segulin, as long as we're on all this, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler show. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on today's show, as well as the TV shows we're discussing on today's show. So if you have read the books or seen the show, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
How many times did you just say show? Let's talk some comics. Jim, this is a big week of news. I mean, this article came out from Bleeding Cool talking about in June, it looks like DC Comics is going to be relaunching everything with number ones. The news is very sketchy, though. What we do seem to know is that Scott Snyder is going to be moving from Batman to Detective Comics with this relaunch. We know that Dan DiDio and Jim Lee both posted to Twitter a picture, just Rebirth, with curtains, closed, waiting to be opened up. Since then, there have been, very quiet reactions from, like, Jeff Johns talking about his excitement about this, but it's been very quiet. And I actually quite kind of like that. If you take a look at the Free Comic Book Day, there's 2 issues. It looks like there's a gold and a silver issue, and both of those are hidden, which, obviously those are probably going to be the kickoff to whatever is going with this. What is your initial reaction to this? Are you excited? Are you leery? Are you somewhere in the middle when this kind of, because, this is, every issue hits 52, or, the books that have been around since the beginning hit 52 at the month before May. So June would be when this is all going down, the month after the issues hit 52. So New 52 hitting 52 is now
Right.
the time for this. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm a professional skeptic, so I'm always leery on anything. It's just my nature. When I'm presented with something, I'm like, okay, what could go wrong with this? And that's just how I look at life, unfortunately. But on the other side of it, a lot of times these changes have brought us some good stuff, but it's always the what are we losing? What's going to go away? Give me that listing. I'm curious. I want to know what's going to happen. Obviously the Snyder's not done with Batman, so that's good. He's changing titles, but he's still going to be writing Bruce Wayne. He's still going to be writing Batman, so I'm happy there because he's awesome with the character. So keep giving me more information. Keep telling me that I'm not losing Secret Six. I'll be happy. When I hear I'm not losing Secret Six, I'll be happy. Right now, I'm like, wait, are they going to do this to me again? Are they going to break my heart again?
I'm going to say something that might be a little surprising there. I think sometimes we get too much information. And I think what happens is you get too much information and it goes just so far that it's vague enough that it really worries and upsets people, if that makes any sense at all. Sometimes you need to get to the point where if you're not ready to give us actual titles with actual creators, tease. And I know that seems like a strange thing to say, but sometimes we get way too much information too early. People get snarky and bring something down very quickly before there's a chance to really see what's going to be done here. Here's what I hope for this, and I'll just wrap it up in a simple bow. I hope whatever they're doing is story-driven, and I hope it's really good story. That's all I want. I want really good story and great art. I want there to be a direction. That's what I want. And I know that seems like overly simplistic, but it's not. It's what we're here as comic fans for, right? We follow these books because of a strong direction that's story-driven, with great creators and great art. I mean, that in the essence is what brings us to the table. So if it's a story-driven direction, that is what's going to keep us going, and we're going to want to keep tuning in to see where the story is going. That's ultimately what pulls you in comics. So if this is some willy-nilly stunt, it won't pay off. I am hoping, and I feel confident, that there's been things that have gone on since the New 52 have began that I think have worked really, really well. There's things that have been missteps. And honestly, I think some of the missteps are, connection with the fans. I think the fans feeling like they are a part of what's going on and they're included. And sometimes you can alienate people by giving them too much of the wrong information too soon and making them think that they're losing everything. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
I think Flashpoint did a lot of that in the sense that I think not necessarily the Flashpoint event itself, but even the way that New 52 was built up originally, people thought they were losing things that really you weren't. If you read Flashpoint, it is so connected to the previous universe that this story continued. And we got some really good stories in the New 52 now. Were all of them home runs? No. The previous universe wasn't all home runs either, though. I think that's a part of the way comics work. There's a certain set number of titles that really hit home run for you. There's titles that fall somewhere in the middle, and there's other titles that just really aren't your cup of tea. And that's kind of the way that things work out in any medium. It's the same thing with television, film. So I just hope with this that whatever they do is strong, story-driven, that they have creators that have long-term goals for whatever their storyline's doing. I don't think these short-term hit-and-run things work. I think one of the titles that's, I think, the best example in New 52 that I love, but I think has... It just as it always gets going, it gets a new creative team, it's Green Arrow.
Yeah.
I think I've really enjoyed what every creative team has tried to do in Green Arrow, but I think we've done this constant shifting. So what I'd really like to see out of this is some more consistency in a creative direction for certain characters. I think Batman's enjoyed it.
Yes.
I think Superman's getting there. But I think Superman's gone through some creative shifts that have been detrimental. Wonder Woman's had 2 creative teams, and I think that is a great example of a book that has benefited from that. I've really enjoyed Wonder Woman's direction a great deal. I'm loving what's going on in Green Lantern still. I think that's been a great book. Flash, 2 different creative teams, great book since the beginning of the New 52. So, I mean, I want to see more of that kind of stuff with some, consistency. Batgirl, 2 different creative teams, and I think that's a book that's benefited from that. Obviously, I'm a Gail Simone junkie, so, you can give her any book, and I'm going to follow it on the basis of the fact that she's writing it. But when you follow her up, you've got to give the creative team that's following her up a chance to develop a direction. And I'm finding that I'm really loving Batgirl right now in a way that if you'd asked me in the first few issues, I wouldn't have been. So I think that's a book that's really been benefiting from creators. So I want to see more of that, some consistency on length of tenure of creative teams, a chance for some direction. Grayson has been a highlight. We had the Nightwing book and then Grayson. So Dick Grayson, I think, has done well in New 52. So I guess I'm looking forward to more of what has been a positive out of the New 52 and less of what has been a negative. And I'd like to see more of the – I know it looks like that the rumor is that a lot of the titles are going to be revolving around successful film and television projects that are out right now. So obviously we're going to have a Suicide Squad series and, characters like that, Harlequin – Aqua, but to me, it means we're going to get an Aquaman book. Yay. Flash, Green Lantern, the characters that we all know and love. It's great. I do hope that means though, that we won't see your point about books like Secret Six. I want that book. That book has got to continue. I just read 10 again last night and it's phenomenal. I mean, so I want books like that and I need books like that. I think DCU benefited from books like Prez. That was a great miniseries, and it was a book that needed to be a miniseries, but it was a great miniseries. I really enjoyed it. Very contemporary. So I want to see stuff like that mixed in with our heavy hitters. And I don't know. I just want them to be good stories with great creators.
Yeah, see, that's the thing that, and that's one of my areas where I'm concerned about, because for me, 52 issues, yeah, that's a good run, but it's still not longevity. And if they're changing everything, then once again, we're going to go back through the craziness that people really had. That when think about just how we were excited for the change, but how many people out there, were furious when they said they were doing a new Action Comics #1. Like, what? You can't do that. That's tradition. And there were a lot of people who swore they'd never read comics again. And maybe some of them did, some of them didn't. I don't know. But that longevity you talk about that is my concern, because if we're doing a complete reboot, what kind of reboot? How's it going? Like, as you said, is it story driven or is it just willy-nilly? If it's story driven, then I'm a lot more understanding and a lot more forgiving. And okay, let's see where it goes. If they're just doing a change for change, I don't like change for change. I like, give me a reason why this is occurring, and I can get back and I can get behind it.
I think, though, at this point, we've seen so many events that have fizzled. And one thing we got to remember with Convergence, like if you take a look, I hear a lot of comparisons to Convergence, and Convergence was really an event that was set to fill the gap when they were moving their offices. I mean, that's really what the purpose of that event was. It did what it did well. I mean, it served as an interesting story and a great send-off to some characters that from different eras that we all knew and loved. So for me, I read a lot of that material, if not all of it. I had in some way touched that material, so it was great to revisit those. And as an event, it served that purpose. It was not meant to be universe-changing. Sure, we felt ripples. We got 3 titles that spun out of that, and I thought they were worthy titles for what they did with them. But that was really what that event was set up to do. With this, I don't know if this is going to be, they're relaunching the titles. Does that mean they're relaunching the universe? Are they redirecting the universe? I mean, there's all different ways this could go. Just because everything's a new #1 does not mean that you're starting over from ground zero. It could be, but that doesn't mean that that's in fact the case. That's one of the interesting parts of this. I think as fans, we have to be careful with assumptions. Assumptions can be exciting, actually, because there's a lot of possibilities on the table with this. And, this could be really a rebirth of creative direction without it being a taking away of continuity elements that we like now. It also could be setting up the stage for, we're not throwing anything away, but we are setting up a stage where people can be invited into the universe at a jumping on point, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing with that, if that's why I wish they'd give us just a little bit more information than just the teases, where we would know, is this a complete change or is this a renumbering? For me, I would probably not. I would have. I don't think I'd have a major issue if it was just a renumbering thing, and this was just a way to say, "Hey, this is a good jump on spot for people." I'm like, "Oh, okay, fine." Go for it. I wouldn't have an issue with it because, as you said, I've really enjoyed the continuity we've got going on. But if they're doing another complete reboot and restarting of the universe, then again, that's where I got to see why is it happening? What's going on? What's the occurrence of this? Is this, what is making this happen? Or, again, it's that mystery that I just, on one hand, teases are nice, but on the other hand, I'm like, dude, man, come on.
I'm actually going to smack down all of you because you're in the same boat as some of the people. We get the solicits how early in advance? They just solicited the May solicits. As far as, that we know that we're going to the 52nd issue, and likely this is happening in June with issue number 1. So in a few weeks, we're going to find out all of this.
But I want to know now.
Yeah, I understand that. But, there comes a point where here's what I want. And I'm actually going to scold anybody who disagrees with this, and it's okay if you do. I mean, it's your own cup of tea. But I don't want to know too much before I actually read the books. Here's what I want to know. What creators are assigned? I want to know as much as you need to tell me about this to entice me. Go ahead and entice me. Don't tell me too much, though. I want to read these issues and enjoy the experience of whatever's being delivered here. These free comic book day issues that are coming out are obviously going to be, the kickoff of whatever this is, and they're top secret hush-hush. I hope they can keep that as secret as possible beforehand, because they're free. I want to see what they're doing, and I actually want some surprise. Now, I do want certain questions answered like you do, so I'm going to correct myself a little bit and apologize a little bit and say that I get that. I want to know, too, are my certain characters protected? And, this continuity that I'm following now, am I losing it? Are they bringing back the stuff that I loved from before? They're in a precarious position as far as I don't see them undoing the New 52. I might be wrong. I don't see them doing that, though, because you've got, to your point, 52 issues. Isn't that long on a continuity?
Yeah.
Is this going to be some way of raveling in the old universe with the new universe? I don't see that being the case. I do think it is more likely that this is going to be an inviting jump-on point for people who are maybe seeing some of the big movies this summer. I mean, we've got that huge Batman v Superman movie coming. We've got Suicide Squad coming. We've had TV specials now alluding to what, Wonder Woman's solo film's going to look like. There's going to be an Aquaman film. There's going to be a Green Lantern Corps film. Flash film. There's characters. Cyborg's going to be introduced in the Justice League. So, I mean, these characters are now being rolled out. So I see this as being a way to put those series as a jump-on point shortly after those films hit. Because, March is the Superman movie. So, Superman-Batman movie. So, I don't know. We've got to be a little patient here. They just solicited. I actually like this. We know something's coming.
Yeah.
I mean, this is fun. There's a build. I don't want to know. Here's the thing. I saw Star Wars. I walked in opening night. I didn't know, and I'm not going to spoil anything on here. I know certain things have been spoiled for you. But one of the things that I really loved about seeing Star Wars, I mean, we do a spoiler podcast and give a warning on purpose because we don't want to ruin that experience for anybody. So, in the case of this, I like going into things with a certain element of surprise. Going into Star Wars The Force Awakens and not knowing everything that was going to play out, and there were big surprises in that movie. It was nice to experience those things. I went that opening night on purpose because I wanted to be surprised. I didn't want it spoiled for me. I wanted to enjoy the experience of, oh, wow, they just did that. What do they do here? Look, that character was in there, that type of thing. I wanted to just kind of experience that awe. I want that with this. Tell me as much as you need to tell me in order to hook me, but then drop it. I just want it. I want a good story. And please have good creators on and great art. I just want really good writing and really good art. That's all I want. I mean,
that's all. That's it.
Yeah. But I mean, isn't that what we're here for? At the end of the day, it's all story. I want good story. I want a direction. And that's honestly a lot of where your concern comes from. But, until, I don't know, I've seen, here's, I guess, where the calm down thing comes from, my frustration comes from. People are trashing this already, right. And it's based on what? There's a difference between what you're doing and trashing it, and I'm not throwing you into that group. There's nothing wrong with being concerned and worried. I'm loving a lot of the titles that I'm reading right now. So like you, I'm worried that I'm going to lose some of them. But I've been through this kind of thing so many times that I've usually found the payoff is whatever I lose, I gain something that is either equal or in some ways surpasses what I was already reading. So, it just kind of works out. It all balances in the end. As long as you've got quality creative teams involved, they will hook you in. That's what I want. So it's interesting on this. I just don't want to see this thing thrown under the bus before it's even had a chance to. Here's the thing. If it sucks, then we're all going to say that. But you got to give it a chance before you trash it. I don't know. The New 52 was really a victim of this when it first launched. And now this is again. And it's like, really, guys, all we've seen is a curtain. And the fact that we're getting number ones. So what are we worked up over exactly?
No, and I agree with you on that. That's the one thing that I'm not, with, my concerns are, my concerns, but it's not like I'm never going to be one of those guys who starts trashing stuff before it comes out. And that's something we do, as comic book fans, we tend to do that a lot where, it's straight, it's gather the pitchforks and your torches, let's invade the castle and storm the castle. We kind of get that mindset a lot of times. And I think that's also, kind of an internet mindset sort of thing where you get that going and it just builds. So, and that's part of the reason I wish they would give us just a little bit more than teasers, especially in this day and age in this culture where we do have the, let's burn them at the stake even before the trial, a little bit more information maybe would quell the fire or maybe it would fan the flames. I don't know. Odds are going the negative side of humanity, I'd say a little bit more information would fan the flames. So they're probably doing a smart thing by just doing a slight teaser. But, again, it's, I know my personality and I want more information. I always want more. And, I don't want details, but I just want, information, a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit, just kind of, get it going for me. But I'm going to sit back. I'll wait and see. As a general rule, I've enjoyed the changes they've made. So I'm not going to, it's a wait and see, but just my personality, you're more positive than I am. My personality is I'm a professional skeptic. And so I always look at a situation and first thing I identify are potential problems. And then I look at what's good. And that's just how I look at life, unfortunately. It's just what I do and who I am. So, so when I see this, I'm going to naturally start looking at the negative stuff. And then as time goes on, I'll see the positive.
Here's where my frustration comes from. And I'll share this, and maybe it'll help people understand why I'm saying what I am. Because my frustration comes from a lot of times there's some event, whether it's a single issue or it's some common thread that all the first issues are going to have or something that precipitates this. A lot of times because of what you're mentioning, Jim, that's revealed before you get to read the story. And whereas I feel like finding out what that catalyst would be far more interesting in the story. I like to read stories and kind of see the ending and experience it and then talk more later about it. It's why we do what we do on the show. I mean, it's fun to talk about this after the fact, and speculate, where things are going to go. In this case, I'm excited, only in the sense that if it's done right and it gets people interested in DC Comics in a way that maybe they haven't been for a while, then it's good. So I get excited for that because I do think that DC takes a lot of flack, more so than Marvel does. And I don't get it. I'm actually a Marvel fan too, so I think what Marvel's doing is really great. I don't think DC's as far off as they're often lauded for, being. I mean, I think DC's doing some creative and interesting things. I think Marvel's doing some creative and interesting things. I think as comic fans, it's a fun time. And I mean, if you branch out of those two companies, I think what's going on in comics right now is really interesting and exciting. So the crabbiness that kind of goes on now, I don't really get, just because it's really there's a smorgasbord of quality that's out there right now. As far as my biggest frustration is I don't have enough time to read everything I want to. It's not even financial. I don't have the time to read everything I want to. My stockpiles come from time. They don't come from money. I've cut back on books only because of the fact that how much bigger can my stockpile get? That's the only reason why I've cut back on titles. It really hasn't been. I'm fortunate enough that I can say that financially I can support what I can read and then some. So, my biggest frustration, I don't think I'm alone in that end. I think there's a lot of comic fans out there that just, because of work, because of school, because of time, they don't have the time to read everything. And there's a lot of people, I think our accessibility to comics is different now, too, with libraries carrying them and things like that. I think there's a lot of people listening to this going, hey, I get all my stuff in trade at the libraries, but yeah, I run into the same problem. I can't read everything I want to. I don't have the time. So I think there's a lot of different avenues to get a hold of these books now than you could before. And I think time tends to be my biggest factor because there's too much good stuff out there. I want this to be good. That's all I want. Pure and simple. Just give me good creators and a good story, and I hope this is good. Here's the thing. I guess here's my question to you, and this is probably one of my concerns, so let's speculate a little bit about this. Do you want it one tight continuity, or what happens if these books aren't as interconnected?
Ooh, good question, because I do like a nice tight continuity. And again, it's, I don't know. Initial gut reaction would be I'd like a nice tight continuity and just the continuation from one to another and just, continue in the story and just say new number ones and I'd probably have less, issues with that. But then again, if they had a really good story to tell for why the continuity would change, I'd back it. Because again, story does determine everything for me. If they've got this solid story that could create, like going from the old universe to the new 52, I was cool with everything. Even though I lost a lot of stuff, I was still cool with it because we got a great story out of it. And we got a great reason behind it. And going forward, we had some great stories. So I was okay with that shift over and that change. That was great because of the process. So with this one, it's the same thing, where if they're just redoing the numbers, I think for me, that would be the easiest for my brain to get around. And that's just my personality, be easiest one to get behind and say, okay, they're just doing new numbers. What's in a name? That which we call a rose, where we'd call it by any other name would still smell as sweet. So let's just keep going. It's not number 53. It's now number 1. Fine. Let's continue on, continue with mission. So I'd be okay with that.
Okay. So what's the draw then for new readers? Because if you just relaunch with number ones, and that's where, here's the thing. This is a stunt. Any way you cut it, it's a stunt. I know a lot of times we say that it's like such a bad thing. It's not. Stunts are fun. Stunts are fun if they're well done. Where stunts become an issue is if there's no backbone to it, no direction to it. It goes back to what I was saying earlier. We want and need direction. So, I'm not against them doing a stunt. The thing I want, though, is if there is going to be a stunt done, I would like the stunt to, of course, have some payoff and substantial payoff that I can follow and enjoy. What is the draw, though, if they just relaunch it with number one issues and it's the exact same stories with no, hook? What is the hook? Because what you really want from this, if they can release issue number 53, I'm still going to be here. I'm not sitting here going, oh man, it's been 52 issues in, I need a new number one right now. They're not targeting me with that. They're not targeting you with that. They're ultimately targeting a new audience with that.
Right.
So what is the draw if they just do new number ones? I don't see that being what they're doing, I guess is what I'm saying. There has to be some hook to this whole thing. So
yeah, I don't see that either, because just what you said, there wouldn't be any draw for new people if they're just continuing on the same continuity and there's no change. There's got to be some type of change, and that's how you're going to bring in the new people. There's got to be a reason why it's now number one, not just on a whim. Because if it's just a whim, then they're going to anger the continuing people. They're going to anger new people. They're going to anger, it's going to be a bad deal. And I don't think they're doing that. But it's one of those things where, I'm already in. So I think it's one of those mindsets a lot of times that I will get in, if I'm reading or watching or doing something I'm enjoying, I don't want change. I don't need change. I understand the need for change to bring in new people. It's like when City of Heroes was around, and anytime they updated the visual stuff, updated the video and it made it look, crisper and cleaner. It didn't matter. That stuff didn't matter to me. That was more of a annoyance to me because, okay, now, I'm slowing down my system because I've got an older system. That was more of an annoyance to me than something really cool and new, but that would bring in new people.
Sure.
Same thing with the stories. If they continue on with some great stories, I'm happy, but that doesn't always bring in new people. So I understand they're doing this. And it's just, again, it's one of those things where I'm like, let's see what happens. What's going to happen here, and it's something that we always got to deal with. And I don't know, why now? Why now? That's my big thing.
The movies. You have a potential. Well, let's talk about that actually. To why now? The timing has to be due to the fact that you've got Superman v Batman coming out. You've got successful television shows running, but honestly, I have to think the Dawn of the Justice League movie has to be a reason why they're doing this.
Right.
If it isn't, and Suicide Squad to a lesser extent, I would think. I'm not diminishing Suicide Squad, but the big kickoff is that Batman v Superman movie. I would say because of the fact that all those books have hit issue number 52 there, I think they tried to find a sweet spot to do that. I honestly think they would have done it closer to the movie launch if they could have. Right. But I think they were looking at, if we give 52 issues for all these titles, it'll be kind of a nice nod to the new 52 as a numbering concept and a handoff to the next era, so to speak. So yeah, I get that. So, I mean, the timing makes sense as far as what they were doing. They were trying to find a balance with the movies and all that. But that does bring us to a question. Do you think, and how closely do you think these should reflect what's going on in TV and film? We've seen bleedovers in the current comics now with what's going on, and I've actually quite liked what they've done. Like, I liked Diggle appearing in Arrow and in the Green Arrow comics, and things like that. So that's and Felicity coming over and those type of things. I think they were done very well in the sense that they weren't telling me stories that were happening on television. They were finding creative ways to make those characters relevant in the comic universe. So, like, how much should these be reflective of film or TV, Jim, in your mind?
Well, in my mind, I like different universes.
I do too.
Yeah, I do like different universes, and and it's funny because I say that, but I've also on multiple occasions said they can take the TV universe and make them on the big screen. But I'm not opposed to them having like two Flashes. They've got the TV Flash and the movie Flash. I'm okay with that. And they've got the comic book Flash. That's fine by me. 3 different universes, 3 different Flashes. That's great. That works for me. I've got no issue with that. Just like we've got, the movie Alfred, we've got the Gotham Alfred, 2 different actors, 2 different people. That's great by me. That works for me. That's cool. I like both Alfreds. I think they're going to be, kind of a neat thing. So it's, I think for me, they don't need to have as much tie-in and as connection. Now, like you said, when Diggle came over, when Felicity came over, those are 2 great characters. And they did a good job with them in the comic book. I was like, hey, I really like that. I was happy with that. When they introduced Chloe Sullivan into the Superman universe back in the old universe, I cheered because I was like, yay, Chloe! Again, because she was a character I enjoyed watching on TV, so having her in the comic book, that was fine for me. But I don't think they need to. And I think if they tried to make it too close, or the comic book has to have its own life to it. Right. And I don't think either universe should be beholden to the other one. The movie universe has its life, the comic book has its own life. So for me, I don't think they need to. I think if they're looking at new people, pulling in new people, maybe that would be a way to go about it. But you think about it, your entrance into entrance in the comic book universe was the 60s Batman show, and that guy was completely dramatically different than anything going on in the comic book. Not
at the time. If you actually take a look at the comics that were being released at that time, they started to become more reflective of the camp style of that TV show. Now, I wasn't born when that show was on air. I was watching the reruns of that. So to your point, the comics I was reading, 70s Batman, was decidedly different than the 66 show. Now, and also to your point, though, I do think that I really enjoyed the comic book Batman because he was not he was like a step up from the guy, and I don't know, step up may be a strong word because I thought highly of the 66 Batman guy when I was going, because I didn't know, when I was a kid, I did not know that was camp. I admittedly was in awe of it and loved it, and I wanted to get in the Batmobile and ride around. I still do. But the 70s Batman was more of the detective, and the stories were darker, and they had an edge to them, and I just got more and more interested in that aspect of the characters. It was a lot more Sherlock Holmes. Yeah. In some of its stuff. I had a book and record set that was fantastic. It was based on some comics, and it had some Neil Adams artwork, and it was phenomenal stuff. There was also an oversized one that actually was a team up of Batman and Sherlock Holmes. There was a Gorilla Grodd story, and I don't know, that kind of stuff. It was definitely taking things in a direction that was very different than television. I think comics at their best, one of the advantages of comics is they can go places and do things that film and television can't because of budget. And that always has to be the advantage of comics, is that they are able to just go a little bit farther because of that. So if you don't take advantage of that and open up those floodgates. So I don't need it to be reflective of that. I really don't want this to be side stories from television. I think I like the digital comics do that. I like DC's digital product. Like, I've loved the Arrow and Flash digital comics that they've done that really are expanding the television universes, but they're crafted from the ground up for that purpose. Right. I want them to keep doing stuff like that. Supergirl, they just released an Adventures of Supergirl comic that's really cool. Again, reflective of television, and I'm cool with that. That's fine. It was created for that purpose. I don't want the whole line to do that. And I would hope they aren't going to go in that direction. I don't think they're going to go in there. I think we're going to see more comics, though, that when I say thematically, I think we're going to see more Batman comics because Batman's on the screen. I think we're going to see more Superman comics because Superman's on the screen. See more of Wonder Woman, more of Aquaman, Green Lantern. It's going to be more of the ones that we're seeing on the screen right now. Versus, and I think less, unfortunately, I think we're going to see less of the ones that aren't. But this could be a good thing because if you got the right creators on them, there could be some really interesting books that are in the process. So, to me, creators and stories has got to be the part. I just hope we don't lose experimentation in it.
Yeah, that's another thing. I hope we don't lose that because you think about just everything that's gone on with the Vertigo experimentation with the new titles and this and that. I'm so hooked onto some of these titles. I'm like, yes. So I hope they don't give up that. Let's try this. Let's try a Mega Man. Let's try Gotham Midnight. These different titles that I thought were absolutely really cool. Stories coming out.
Earth 2.
Earth 2. Yeah.
Whether it's Earth 2 or a Full Justice Society title or something like that, those are characters that are really important to me. I think I'm afraid that those are characters that are going to wind up on the chopping block due to this. But again, the payoff is, well, what cool book am I going to... Because here's the thing. They're not going to cut their publishing output. They're going to redirect it if they cancel any titles. So what cool title are they going to redirect stuff like that to? And I'm not saying they're canceling Earth 2, don't get me wrong. But I'm saying, if they cancel something like that I'm really digging, what are they putting in its place that I might find interesting? And usually what ends up happening with me is I'm very sad over the title I've lost, but I'm excited about the new one that I'm getting. The greedy part of me wants all of it.
Yeah, I'm in the same way.
Where it's, I want the new title because it's interesting and they've got great creators on it, but I also want the title that they're replacing it with. So that's what ends up happening with me, which is why I don't get worried about this stuff. I'm like, no, they usually throw out something else that I'm going to like. So I'm okay on that end. I'm sad because there's, I lose some characters or a title that and I know that's what's going to happen here. I'm going to lose some titles that I'm enjoying. I mean, that's what's going to happen. But, I hope I get to keep things like a great example. Here's a book that I'm digging that if you'd told me is going to be one of my favorite titles, I love Superman Wonder Woman. I'm pretty much assuming we're still going to get that, but who knows where that relationship's going to be after all this.
I got a feeling that one's going to go bye-bye.
I don't know. Did you read the most recent issue?
No, I haven't yet.
You got to keep reading that book. I don't know. Okay. Court's still out for me. I'm still rooting for the romance.
Well, hey, so am I. So am I. I'm just the last issue I read, the annual, it looked like that was the end. That was the end. Because it wasn't just about one moment. There was multiple. They really laid out their romance, and you kind of understand. You really understand where Clark's mind is now, and seeing that, I'm like, I don't know. I think this may be over.
Keep reading.
Yeah. Okay.
And what I'm saying right now doesn't dispute anything that you're saying, but I don't know. I saw some glimmers of hope in the most recent issue. I'm just digging the storyline. I cannot believe I'm more interested in Superman and Wonder Woman as a romantic couple than Superman and Lois.
Yes.
I actually am a very comfortable. Now, I love the Lois and Clark book that's out right now, so don't get me wrong on that one. But I'm saying in the New 52, Superman, Wonder Woman, I'm all in. I think they're a great couple.
You know what? I'm gonna concur on that statement.
Yeah.
And I was the huge Lois and Clark fan.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I love that relationship. And I'll read Up and Away.
Which is
the
phenomenal.
Jeff Johns story where they were married and where Superman didn't have his powers and he was dealing with that whole ramifications of that and just seeing the romance between the two of them. And I was like, man, I love this relationship. But I'm really loving the Superman and Wonder Woman. I'm like, I don't want this to end.
I want to be curious to see what happens with them on the big screen, because we're going to have Wonder Woman come on the scene. I know that Steve Trevor's in the movie, but the movie takes place in World War I, right?
Yeah, World War I. I'm pretty sure it's World War I, not World War II.
Right. So here's the thing. Regardless, World War I or World War II, you're still, the Batman v Superman is jumped ahead to 2016.
Right.
So Steve Trevor would be quite a bit older at that point, even if he was World War II.
Yeah.
I actually like that it's World War I just because I think that's an interesting premise, to kind of go back that far with her and show some longevity. But what happens if, like, those two, because I like Amy Adams' Wonder Woman. I mean, Amy Adams' Lois Lane. I like that relationship that she's currently got with Clark. What's going to happen if Wonder Woman's on the scene with all this? See, the film universe has its own interesting storyline going on there, too. That I agree with you, actually, where you were saying earlier that you're fine with the television being separate from the film and stuff. I'm cool with that. I love my TV stories right now. I can't get enough. I love what's going on in the movies, and I can't wait to see what happens in the comics. I do think if there's something that DC could do better, I would say this across comics in general, I don't know how you do this. The best way to get through and combat snark is to make interactivity fun for fans. And I think it's something, if comics could find a way to, first of all, not treat their paper medium, or the comic itself, the original source material as like the bastard stepchild, and actually treat it as, a viable source of creativity. They pull from this stuff for film, and instead of just looking at it as, we'll pull from this, we'll create a comic every so often that'll, lead towards a film. That isn't why these stories wind up on film. They wind up on film because these stories were created originally to fit into a much larger continuity that has stood the test of time, that has evolved over time. And if you discount the medium for the way it delivers storytelling and try to force it into being a movie storyboard, you lose what makes comics great. You need it to be this continual serialized medium of creativity, because I think that's half the creativity in comics is keeping it interesting for people month after month, hooking you to come back. So I'm excited for this because, okay, hook me. What are you going to hook me with? I'm hoping this isn't some shallow stunt. I considering some of the creative behind it, like you see Jeff Johns tweeting about his excitement about it. I have a lot of faith in Jeff Johns. I really do.
Yeah.
So he's their chief creative officer. And, a lot of times stuff gets thrown on, where it's like, another Dan DiDio, Jim Lee ploy. You got to remember, it's not just them that are involved in this. And I don't know, I'm still a DC fan and still enjoying what DC is doing because of the fact that it's all the other creative elements that are also throwing that in there. I don't think this is going to be a cheap stunt. I hope this is something where DC's learned from what hasn't worked and what's turned off some of their audience. Because here's a fact. I know I'm loving what I'm reading right now. I know you're loving what you're reading right now. But from what we've seen, that's not entirely true of all of the audience. There's some people that they've turned away. There's some people that fall in the middle that aren't quite where you and I are. And then there's people that are in our camp where they're digging everything. So to me, whatever they're going to do with this has to be done in a clever way where it keeps you and I not from feeling disenfranchised, because you want to keep those people hooked in, your diehards that are still loving what you're doing. But at the same time, you want to take a look at how can we hook in people that we've lost along the way and hopefully garner a new audience? Comics are not doing that well. Comics are not pulling in a new crowd. So I hope whatever this is, there is a marketing plan that pulls in people from TV, from film, and gets them to read comics without derailing what makes the comics a unique experience. And it's an interesting balance. I know I'm asking for a lot, but I think there's ways to use social medias, games, like there's online web-based games, there's mobile games and platforms and things where you can make people interested in playing different versions of characters and seeing that, you can educate people that there's the movie Superman, there's the comic Superman, there's the mysterious Superman that we never see on screen that's on Supergirl. Stuff like that. The video game Superman from Injustice, kind of educating fans that there's a lot of different Supermen, and this is cool because their storylines and backstories are a little bit different. You can play as them in a game, and your favorite Superman can go against somebody else's favorite Superman. And these sound like simple things, but I don't think comics are usually the last piece that are considered in this equation instead of being an equal partner. And I'd love to see the medium. I know it doesn't generate the profit that the television and film do, and that's the reason. But because it's such a rich creative source, I would love to see them throw comics more of a bone in marketing and using television and film in some avenue to promote the comic product. And this rebirth that's going to go on, if it's going to be successful, whatever it's going to do, it has to be a great story. It has to have great creators. It has to have great art. It has to not alienate your current readers, but at the same time, it has to bring in new readers. That's the only way it's going to be successful. You also have to keep retailers from feeling burned, because I think retailers are feeling very frustrated right now from what I think with all these relaunches. That's not just a DC thing, but I think it's getting very hard to follow, as far as for a retailer who's trying to budget and decide what titles that that their readership's following. They keep relaunching all the time. And I don't mean just DC. That's happening, both of the big two companies are doing a lot of relaunches. I can imagine that's probably very frustrating for a retailer. I'm no expert there. I'm making a lot of assumptions there. But that's something, too, where you have to make retailers feel like they're a part of the experience as well. It's a very tricky balance. So I hope this plan has a lot of those elements considered. But I would positive social interactions revolving around this type of product is something, if DC can find a way to foster some of that and put some people on that, that's going to bring people in, too. Because there really aren't many positive social interactions out there. I used to participate in their forums years ago, and I left because I just got angry every time I went in there. And that isn't a good experience. That doesn't help your product. Comics are an escape for me. This is fun for me. I shout out our Facebook group community, and I use "our" very loosely when I say that because it's really theirs, and I mean it that way.
They've taken over.
No, and that's what you want, though, with a community. You want to be able to step away, and they just do their own thing. We initiated it, sure, but it doesn't work if the people there haven't owned it, and they own it. And I'm proud to be in a background sense remotely associated with that, because I do feel like that community is a positive experience. It's not the only one. I do think podcasting in itself has lent to some really positive comic book interactions, but there's a lot of snark out there still that is detrimental to comics as a medium. And I don't think is representative of the quality of the product now, and it really bugs me. I would love to see comic companies doing more to be ambassadors to their audience base, because we all want to feel like we're interacting with them, right? I mean, there's a little kind of throwing of a bone. That's why I love creators on Facebook who go out of their way so often to make themselves accessible to their fans. It's hard for them to do, but they do, endear themselves to you because of the fact that they take the time to post and let you into their world and, give you a nod about how their excitement about certain projects that are coming up. And sometimes they'll throw up a blurb or an artwork tease or something that's what's going on in an upcoming project of theirs. We like that. So I'd like to see more of that from the company proper, from DC, kind of reaching out to the fans more in a way that makes you feel more like you're connected to them directly. Because I think that starts to build loyalty and gets people talking. And I think you can do that in a way where DC can acknowledge the fact that they have a film audience, a TV audience, and a comic audience. And once you start going to that site and interacting with all of those mediums together, you're going to kind of jump to some of the other ones, right? I mean, that's kind of why we do that, right? You get pulled into the swag. Comics need to look like swag again to people who aren't a part of the medium. And they don't right now. You need a new, you know what you need? We said this before on the show. Comics do not have a newsstand crowd right now. They need a newsstand crowd. When we grew up, you could get comics on the newsstand, and it was so easy for a casual person to grab comics. It's not now. It's not a medium that's set up that way. Yes, the accessibility is there, but the price point and the education over the product and what it has available is not there. And I think that's where I'd love to see more of that interconnectivity on the websites, because I want the comics around. That's really, I don't mind these type of stunts. I just want it to pay off. So I hope whatever they've got here, it's going to be really cool. I want to be surprised by it. I want it to be more than I'm expecting. I want us all to go, oh, I didn't see that coming. That's neat. And that's what, in the end, that's what when we all get a payoff from this. I don't know. I'm kind of pontificating, but I get it. I don't know. I'm excited for them. I just hope it's good. And I hope I don't feel disenfranchised.
Yeah, I'm just sitting back going, yes, just nodding my head along with you.
That would be the sad thing out of this. If there's one thing that would make me sad out of this, that I were to go to you, Jim, I read all the new number ones. I don't like any of them. I mean, is that a possibility? Sure. For me, is it likely? No. But, yeah, it's not. I mean, it's because I don't know. I like new things. I like when creators do their own takes on it. I don't know. Scott Snyder's going to be on Detective Comics #1, right?
So that's good right there.
Yeah, I mean, okay. I got one book you got me hooked in on. I just don't know what the rest of them are going to be. I'm hoping there's a Secret Six title in there. Tom King, I'm hoping he's doing some stuff because, man, I was reading Grayson the other night and, man, is that a good book.
I know.
And Sheriff of Babylon, I'm really digging. And Vision, there's a guy who I'm hoping they've locked him in on some stuff. Hopefully continuation of Grayson. So I don't know. Cool. Because of the fact that we want to jump to a television discussion, there's a book this month, though, that like the two of us I called you up on the phone. I said, we were talking about this episode and I'm like, I know we're talking TV on this one, but we're going to start talking about like DC's direction and stuff like that. And I said, did you read Batman 48? So we're not going to do no disrespect to the creative team. We're going to really kind of lightning around this one and start talking because I'm going to jump right to it. The last 2 pages. I mean, oh my God, bang, 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 bang. And you see Alfred just looking there. No, bang, 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 covering his ears. Now that I can't hear you. That's Alfred saying that, right?
Yeah, that's Alfred saying that.
Take me to my cave. The tears coming down his face. Here's the thing. I don't think Bruce 100% knows yet. Do you? Like he knows, but he doesn't know?
I'm thinking he knows. I'm thinking Bruce is back. And I think, because, at the end of the last issue, he was just about to say, I'm Batman,
right,
when Joker shows up. And before that, when he was dealing with, with hopefully who will be his new Robin, and he kind of called Bruce out on, about looking the other way and about letting, his responsibility. And you saw that kind of that bat train that was flying at him and all that. And just the mind's coming back. And then just the intensity of this moment, especially because right before this, he was at the shelter and the one little girl planted a seed in her because she was going to protect the shelter. And you see Bruce is bloodied. He's got blood on his head. His jacket looks all messed up. He's in a fight, getting back there. And take me to my cave. I'm thinking he may not be Batman yet, but he knows he is Batman.
Oh, yeah. Wait, hang on. Let me clarify that. I wasn't saying that, like, he doesn't know. The dude came and started banging on the door, said, take me to my cave. So that's pretty cut and dry. What I mean is, though, if he put on the suit and went running out right now, he'd probably get his butt kicked.
Yeah, probably.
Because I don't think it hasn't clicked yet. That's what I mean.
Okay, yeah. We're okay, yeah.
So, because I'm with you. Like, you don't come and knock down a door if you don't think you're Batman. I would, but that's because I've played Batman too much as a kid. But I mean, normal people don't go and do that. Actually, we're seeing it the same way, though. That's the exciting part of this story is You mentioned the Duke Thomas piece, and I love that part of the story. I'm so glad you went there because that wasn't clicking with me right now, but I like the idea of how much has Bruce been in denial because of how happy he is. You know, I mean, there comes a point in time where, like, you start to realize that the math doesn't add up, or you start to see certain things that start to click with you, but yet look at what you have in front of you. I mean, he has a really good life compared to what he was saddled with before. And there comes a point where you have to decide who you are, and that responsibility comes crashing down around you. And do you accept that, or do you keep running? And I think that situation with the little girl was kind of the icing that, you know, was on the cake at that point, because he looked at that and was like, I think it's time to go get in my cave.
That was the thing that was the final trigger that said, I've got it. My city needs me now.
Yeah.
I need to do this. And that's the part of the thing that makes Batman so cool is, you know, that he puts the needs of the city over his own. You know, and there's been so many really great stories I've read about him and seen him. And it was like the one animated, you know, the cartoon, when they first really started showing his year one.
Yeah.
When he's sitting there in, it was before he actually first put on the cowl, and he had met that girl, and he was happy, and I still can remember that scene, you know, where he's at their grave, basically begging his parents' permission to not become Batman. So, you know, he's like, I'll donate, you know, I'll work with the police, I'll help them out. It doesn't hurt as much as it did before, you know. And you have those moments where you feel for Bruce, because this is a guy whose his sole reason, well, the main trigger that created Batman was the distraught, you know, of a little boy who witnessed his parents dying, post-traumatic stress of a little child who witnessed his world be murdered right in front of him. You know, and so that has always been just that foundation. The pain is the foundation of where Batman comes from. So that's always something that always fascinates me, because of, you know, it's that horrific pain, that horrific event that he had to deal with as a child is what created that initial drive and that initial fire and burn in him for justice. And and then now it's back, and you're like, oh, but he was so happy before, and Alfred was happy, and their life was good, and they even convinced the Justice League to back off.
Yep.
I love those moments where the Justice League was, you know, talking to Alfred, and Alfred's like, you got to understand, he's not the same guy anymore. He's free, and and they all backed off, and they said, hey, all of the Robins backed off and said, you know what? Bruce is free, you know, and they let him have his freedom, and now he's back, and you're like, oh, I feel horrible, but I'm happy, because, you know, again, it's the story. I want to see him back in a cowl, but I feel horrible for my friend who had this moment of happiness, who's now, that's all gone.
But here's the thing that's often forgotten about when it comes to Batman and what his driving force and motivation is too. His parents' death was the catalyst, but it's not the whole story of what drives him to be Batman. Yes, that was the event that made him aware of injustice and harm that can happen to those who can't protect themselves. But over the years, I think what is often forgotten is that Gotham is his city. And when you become the protector of something and set a direction for it where you want to save it and you want it to become something more, and you see the potential, and it's your home, and you want your home to go to that next level, to that place, you stick with it, and your drive pushes you to want to take it further to the next level and to continue with all that. This isn't just about his parents. This is also about Gotham. And he and Jim Gordon always had that in common. Their quest to save Gotham, to make Gotham something more. Well, Bloom has put Gotham in a place that it really hasn't seen in the New 52 since Zero Year. It is one of the areas where, when I hear criticisms of the New 52, it's one of the areas where I don't know that I have necessarily a deep argument with, there's fans who say you lose a little bit of Batman when you compress his storyline down to what it's been compressed to, because you lose the sense of longevity of his battle in Gotham. And I get that, and I actually agree with that. I think what Snyder's done masterfully is crafted enough stories that are seriously epic that you go, well, I guess I'm having a little trouble with that argument now, because dude's done a lot. and I guess, he does have a pretty big investment now in what he's doing, based on, the fact that he was actually operating before the New 52 started. So they did give him more longevity than the New 52 storyline, in the fact that he is the single most long-running hero in the DC universe. He actually predates Superman in the fact that how he's been operating, because of the fact that Superman's story was changed So he's actually DC's first superhero in the New 52, which is interesting. Not the first public one. First public one was Superman. Batman was a myth, an urban legend.
Yeah, he was hiding in the shadows.
The first one operating. He was a vigilante. Yeah. Superman really is the first superhero, with the way that it turned out. But the longevity they've given with this, and this Bloom storyline, if there's one thing with Snyder, man, dude's got a twisted mind. Because the Court of Owls and Blooms, and I mean that in a totally loving way, because one of my favorite authors is Stephen King. And one thing I like about his stories is he just introduces, when you think you've seen every kind of horror or mystery story from him, or suspense, he crafts something where you're like, where did he come up with that? and Snyder does this really well in the Bat universe. He keeps raising the bar. I thought the Court of Owls was like his, swan song. Once he introduced that, it was kind of like, where do you go from there? Because you've put something so rich into the mythos that, the Court of Owls have appeared multiple times since, and they feel now like they're a part of the larger, they're your Penguins, your Jokers, people like that. It's the Riddler, it's that caliber, Catwoman, Bane, as far as something that's going to stick around. Bloom is going to become that.
Yes.
Because this Bloom
definitely.
thing is so cool and twisted and adds a supernatural into it. And it's everything I love about Batman. And it's really a creepy villain. It's one where you're like, if you have an here's the thing that's great about Batman. You have the opportunity to say, you know what? Ignorance is bliss. I'm going to stay friendly, Bruce, and not get involved with the big flower guy. Instead, he looks at that and says, no, I'm running towards that. I love that about Batman. And, he's bursting down a door because he wants to get himself back into fighting shape so he can go up against that guy. I can't wait to see this battle. As much as I love Robobat, yes, and I love Jim Gordon, I cannot wait to see Bruce Wayne versus Bloom.
Yeah, it's like, how are they going to... Because Bruce has to go into battle right now. The way the story is being laid out, I don't see him having the time to do the training. And that's the thing that has me, again, it's one of those I love about the stories where you're reading and going, how could he win this? There's no way he could really win this. How can he do it? And I love when that thought enters my head.
You're forgetting something. The story already has an out. Bruce created something to recreate himself.
True.
It wasn't finished. But what if he and Alfred do? We've got because it's supposed to be issue 50, right? Where he comes back.
Yeah.
So next issue is going to be how this happens, right?
Right. And then 50 is Bruce is back.
This story's had an out built into it right from the get-go. I would be in shock if that was a throwaway.
Oh, it's not. So, but it is the, even with Bruce being back, I'm still going to say, how can he beat this guy? Because that's what they've done so well with the crafting of Bloom, where they're making him one of those characters where you're like, there's no way Batman can do this. And I love it going into a book, where I'm thinking that. Because then when he actually does rise up and he does defeat it and he does win, you go, whoa, that's awesome. That's why he's Batman, because he can pull off stuff like that. If this was, same thing like with Superman now, the way they're crafting the stories where it's, you're questioning whether Superman can do it. Granted, the book has their name on it. So I'm pretty confident Batman in the end is going to win. But going into it, you're thinking, how can he do it? What can he do? How can he deal with this? And I love that notion where there is that doubt in my head.
Now, see, if you take a look at where the state of Bruce's world right now, and this storyline, and referring back to our original discussion about DC relaunching or Rebirth or whatever this thing's going to be, you're putting Batman. We're at issue 48 right now that we're talking about, right? Assuming that 49 is going to be the issue where we see, Bruce rebuild himself, however that's going to look. And 50 is where we're going to start. 50, 51, and 52 is really where we're going to see all of this kind of pay off into an epilogue. That puts him in a spot for a new status quo.
Right.
Puts him, Jim Gordon, all of Gotham in a new status quo. What that's going to look like, because does this mean that Jim Gordon has to hang up his cowl? I don't know. And that's interesting to me. You don't have to end any of this to relaunch. You relaunch to a new status quo. So that could be where this is going, especially with the fact that you've got one of the lead writers of all this going to be on Detective Comics. Are we dropping all of this, or are we embracing the fact that it's a new status quo and it's time to do that? For a lot of these characters, if you take a look at Superman's also ready, primed for a new status quo. So what is this all going to look like with this Rebirth? I'm that part has me excited.
Yeah, and that could very easily be what they're going to do. Where the issue 1 would be Bruce back in the cowl as Batman full time. Mm-hmm. And it could also be the end of the Robo-Bat. Because you think about it, 50 he's back in the cowl fighting Bloom. 50 and 51 he's fighting Bloom. 52 is the end of Robo-Bat.
Doesn't
and then
have to
53
be.
Is Bruce and hopefully Duke, as his Robin.
Does it have to be?
No, it doesn't have to be.
No, I'm saying the end of like I'm saying, is there a way for
Robo-Bat and Bruce at the same time?
Do you want to see Jim Gordon go back to being police commissioner, or do you want to see Jim Gordon continue on his current path as a crime fighter the way that he is now? Where would you like to see that go?
I like him as the police commissioner. But again, if they have the Robo-Bat, I want Gordon in the costume.
Sure.
I don't want anybody else other than Gordon in Robo costume. But if they get rid of the concept of Robo-Bat, because you think about it, this one in 48, they basically launch an army of Robo-Bats.
Right.
To fight Bloom. So this could be the decimation of the Robo-Bat army, or this could be the justification why Gordon always said, we don't want an army of this.
Right.
We could learn, why the concept of the multiple bats and the multiple people in different costumes is a bad idea through this story. And that could further justify why Gordon should be the commissioner and Batman should be Batman.
Yeah, I'm honestly, there's so many possibilities. See, this is where, taking a look at where this storyline's going right now, there's such a justification for why this would be a good time to relaunch these books.
Yeah.
And that's story-driven. That's what I was saying earlier, and that's why I wanted to make that point in lieu of this, because when you take a look at this storyline, it's like, well, there's a perfect time to say we're ready for a new status quo, a new jumping-on point for new readers to come on board. That could be what they're doing here. I don't know that that's what it is. That's another assumption. But, see, I'm excited for that stuff. Great. Okay, new story, new direction. Obviously, with Snyder moving to Detective Comics, at least it begs the question, who's on Batman then? And that's the flagship book. So, food for thought. Because if you're going to do this, right, you're going to pull some top-tier creators for that. So, what are they doing? I see, this is the part we get leery about this stuff. We forget the excitement of, oh, wait, that leaves that door open for the main Bat title. They're got to be planning something big there.
It's got to be.
You're not going to move Snyder.
Yeah.
You're not going to move Snyder from that and put a creative team on there you think that's going to drop sales.
Yeah, and who, again, that's the question. Who will be that title? What will be it? Because I can't see them getting rid of Batman title.
Well, they aren't doing
there's
that.
going to be Batman and Detective Comics.
Sure.
It's got to happen. So what is the two books differentiate and distinguish? Is the one going to be more of they've done it in the past where the one was Batman focused and the other one was more Batman and Robin focused? Or are they going to keep a Batman and Robin title, or are they not even going to have that? Or what's the deal? It's again, it's, you know, I said it before. I am, you know, always, you know, nervous and leery of stuff, but I am excited because there is a lot of possibility they can do on this. So it's, you know, there's a lot of craziness and a lot of coolness that can come from this.
I'm going to use a Marvel example right now of an upcoming title I'm excited about. I was just reading a news blurb about there's going to be a Captain America title launching with Steve Rogers as Captain America, written by Nick Spencer. Now, I love Nick Spencer's writing. When Nick Spencer was over at DC doing some cool books over here, I really got interested in that writer and started following the writer beyond DC. The idea of Nick Spencer doing a Captain America book has me really excited. Now, I'm loving what they're doing with Captain America right now. You know, it's Falcon is basically Captain America over there, and I'm digging that stuff. I don't want to see this necessarily take the place of that because I'm digging what they're doing with that. But I'm a Steve Rogers fan. The idea of like having a writer that I really enjoy writing Captain America, somebody who I haven't seen write Captain America. I don't know if Nick Spencer's done any Captain America before. I'm just going to be honest on that one, you know, where it's been a Steve Rogers exclusive focus. But this is going to be my first exposure to it, and I'm really excited for it just because I like Nick Spencer. So that's, you know, you're relaunching that, and it's a story relaunch. You know, that's the reason and the drive for it. So I'm excited for that. So that kind of stuff, I mean, I don't know. I guess that's where I get less and less worried because of the fact that these can be very positive moves where you're putting on top, interesting, unique creators. I do know that DC's got this writers program now where Scott Snyder's doing some mentoring of some writers to kind of, you know, help them transition into like, you know, DC direction and that type of thing. I think that's cool that they're doing that. I think we're going to have some interesting creative talent. You know, the talent pool they've got right now are people that we're really digging. I'm hoping that a lot of what they're doing with this is to tighten up some of the things. Here's a great example. You and I were not fans of what happened with the Green Lantern Corps book.
Right.
You know, that book fizzled and now it's turning into a miniseries. And we were both loving the direction of that title and wanted to see that book continue. I'm hoping that some of the moves they're making with this are calculated moves to prevent things like that from happening again. You know, I mean, where we get some really cool, solid directions that we can follow. So I'm looking to those type of things as positives. And Batman is really a title where I'm looking at the fact that Scott Snyder is going to be on the flagship, you know, the original flagship book, Detective Comics, and we're still continuing, I'm assuming continuing this direction. I'm getting more and more excited than I am leery. I wonder if that's the case, though, like, if you're not, like, okay, I'm a Batman fan, so you've got me, you know, that's my main character, so you got me with that. I wonder if you're a DC fan, but maybe you're not, because I'm sure there's DC fans that are more Superman, more Wonder Woman, more Aquaman, more Green Lantern. You know, Myron Rumsey, let's use him as an example, you know, over at Blog of Oa and Podcast of Oa. You know, he's a Green Lantern guy. Now, I don't remember his history as far as if there were other characters, but I know, you know, Green Lantern, I mean, he's doing a whole awesome podcast on Green Lantern. I'm a big fan of what he does over there. So you got to wonder, you know, what does this look like for him? Because, you know, really, he started podcasting during the golden era of Green Lantern recently, the most recent golden era of Green Lantern, with the whole Jeff Johns run where it was just, you know, crazy big stories that were going on there. I'm very curious to see his take on this relaunch and what it means for him. What are his concerns with relation to the Green Lantern books, and how does that fit into his own? I wonder if he is more leery than I am, because of the fact that it might have a greater impact on those books, more or less.
Yeah, because, you know, well, one of the things I'm hoping we get out of this whole relaunch or rebirth thing, that we do get more of the Green titles back.
Yeah, I want a core.
I want a Green Lantern Corps title back, and I want a Green Lantern book still, and I want, the multiple titles that we have out there, that we had out there in the Green universe. I'd like to see those come back, and that's something that, again, you talk about. Just, is this just done for a status change? So maybe this could be the issue one, is when the Green Lantern Corps comes back to this universe. Maybe that could be why it's, that's the rebirth, that they're back in this universe. The Green Lanterns are back. You know, and it's dealing with that. Or maybe it's Hal Jordan going back to the Green Lantern Corps and being part of the Green Lanterns again. You know, there's a lot of different stuff they could say that it could be with the Green Lantern universe. So just like with Batman, you know, and Superman getting his powers back, maybe we'll get back the dun-da-da Superman at the relaunch, and that's why it's why it's a rebirth. It's a rebirth of that character, reinvigoration of the character. So we definitely could get stories in all these main titles.
How caught up are you on Superman's story right now?
I think I'm like an issue behind.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to keep my mouth shut. Okay. No, he doesn't have. He doesn't have his. Let me put it this way: he doesn't have his powers back, so I'm not.
Right.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not ruining anything for you on that end. It's more of a. We could get into a whole discussion on assumptions I'm making, but man, I'm digging that story. You know what? One other thing I'd like to say, as far as the Green Books, just because we were talking about them in general, and this will be spoiler free. Omega Men is a title that I consider a Green Book right now, just because of the Kyle Rayner presence in that title. I think it's become kind of, to me, kind of the sister title to the Green Lantern books. I do hope if that title doesn't continue in some fashion, because I'm loving it. I really am, and it's a book I recommend. If you're out there and you're like, I've never picked it up, and I know it's ending, I'm not going to pick it up, I would say please don't let that stop you from enjoying an awesome title, because I think it's really a great book. And with the fact that you can pick it up at your comic shop now or digitally, do yourself a favor and pick that title up and try it, because I just really think it's a special book. I'm hoping that Tom King gets a book in that universe family if Omega Men isn't continuing. Just because I really think he's got a cool grasp of the outer space world. And I would just like to see him to continue to have a voice in that, because I'm really digging what they're doing right now. And I was very sad to see that core book go the way that it did. I'm glad the miniseries is being given, I'm glad they recognize we've got to do something to wrap up this storyline for the fans. But I was sad to see the way that went, because I was really enjoying the direction a great deal. And it's a shame when the only two titles that seem to be at least solid right now that you don't hear a lot of rumblings about is the main Green Lantern book and Sinestro. Whereas both Omega Men and that Green Lantern Corps story that was going on were, two of my favorites. And I was sad to see. I'm glad to see that they gave Omega Men a new lease on life due to fan reaction, because I would argue Omega Men has everything that I love about his work on Vision. He's taken a really cool take on a concept that needed to be modernized. Omega Men as a modern concept really works.
Yeah.
Vision as a modern concept really works. Tom King's doing a great job at reinvigorating some unique concepts. That's the experimentation I was talking about earlier that I want to see more of. Because those type of titles are kooky and fun. And I need kooky and fun.
Now, speaking of kooky and fun,
are we talking to Bloom? Are we talking Bloom again?
Well, I'm talking Joker.
Oh, yeah. We really did gloss over that, didn't we? Go for it.
I love that sequence on the bench with Joker, and just the moment where he's just sitting there talking, and he's like, "Don't go back to what you were before," Because here's the thing: just like Batman, just like Bruce, Joker's happy. He works at a butcher's shop. I have an apartment. I'm happy. You used to look lost, sort of haunted, but lately you seem at rest. So then don't do it. Don't become who you were before. I love just those moments right there. And I was sitting there and I'm reading this because last issue when he shows up, you're like, oh my God, it's the Joker. Because very clearly and obviously tell green eyes and pale skin. There's not a lot of guys in Gotham who look like that. But and as he's talking, and just that moment where, he goes there and he confesses that he bought a gun for one simple reason. He was going to kill himself. He was done. And that was it. And Joker found a way to live on. But now with Bruce being back, does that mean the Joker's back? Oh, boy. I'm like, dang, this is awesome.
Now, here's the thing. I think you're underplaying how crazy the Joker still is, though. So he started coming here day by day and still doing this. This isn't something that he's stopped doing.
Right.
He still continues to do that. So he's still off his rocker a bit. I do like that the tete-a-tete between the two of them, like, for as much as they're denying their natures, they almost can't. And I think that was what I got out of it as well. Like when the Joker's saying that to him, so don't do it, don't do it. It is more of is he telling that to Bruce or is he telling that to himself? And I loved that bit because it can be read on, like everything you said is correct. So this isn't me going and saying, Jim, you're wrong. I love the layered aspect of that particular arc there. Because when you read that, you can go back and read it again on a different layer and see it from a different perspective. It doesn't contradict that other perspective. It is, you can really see that from a lot of different emotional angles because of the fact that they've really got multiple people inside them fighting to come out. Yeah. So the question is, who are they really? And who will they really be after this? What is Bruce going to be after this? Like, is he and Julie, are they going to be done as a couple after this? Will there be any hope for them after this? How does that work? I don't know. I'm excited for that. I mean, that's the part of this storyline that I think is so rich that, yeah, he's going to become Batman again, but what does that mean?
Yeah, and it's funny because when you talk about with the Joker, was he saying that to himself? That thought never popped in my head. I was honestly thinking, but that is a very true statement with the Joker. That could be the conversation he has with himself every time he shows up at that park.
But yet he was having it with Bruce too, though. So here's the thing: the layer you laid out a layer that I think is 100% valid. But the thing I love about Snyder's writing, he's multi-layered. And what's interesting about him is I think his storytelling has just as much depth as Morrison's does. I just think it's delivered in a very different fashion. And I find that with Snyder's, my first read through, I find that I get a lot from the story right from the. This is going to sound like I'm insulting Morrison, and I'm really not, because I'm a big fan of Grant Morrison's writing. But I do find that Grant Morrison's writing style, the first time through, I get to the end, and a lot of times I'm like, huh? And then I got to go back through again, and then the light bulb goes off, and I click on it, and that could be my own ignorance or whatever. I always find that it's worth the experience, and I love Morrison's writing, so please don't take that as a negative on his writing. I do find that he has that depth, and it's worth it, and I value like kind of seeing the layers of his work. Snyder's, I find I really have an effortless experience the first time through. The value for me the second and third time is where I see the layers. And this is a great example of an issue where seeing it the second and third time through, I read it one way the first time through and really enjoyed it. Second time through, the bench sequence played off very differently for me. And I read it again a third time and it played off differently again. His depth just plays out differently for me than it does for Morrison. It's just as rich as I think what a Grant Morrison does. And I think Snyder's writing continues to evolve and grow as he does these stories, which is why I'm so thrilled that he's continuing on with Batman, whatever this is going to look like post the 52 issues of this. But man, that bench sequence was incredible.
Yeah. Here's something I'm wondering now, and I hope it's not true.
Okay.
But what if, the whole question of what's going to happen with Julia and all that, and Bruce and all that stuff, and what if it's already been decided? What if the blood and the fighting, something bad happened to her? Because you think about it, the last thing we see before he's at the cave is he's at the center, and the little girl plants the seed, and you don't know what happens. You see the craziness, and then he's at the cave. He's got the busted up head, and he looks like he's been in in a battle. What if we lost her already? And that's maybe the. I hope not, because I like the character, and I really wish they would find a way for them to still be together. But what if we got more tragedy for Bruce? Oh, I'm hoping I'm wrong. I hope to God I'm wrong, but I can't. I don't see them letting Bruce be happy, unfortunately.
Here's the thing. To me, if you look at that sequence with the girl and what happens there, obviously there is something that happens during that sequence we haven't seen yet, and I hope we do see it in issue 49 because I want to see where it plays off too. I don't know, man. You have a girl who's like injected herself with that, and she's saying, I'll be Batman to save everybody.
Yeah,
that's enough. I mean, how much more do you need to do to the guy to get him to I mean, I think the Joker bench sequence and that is enough to make him say, I kind of want to know where my cave is now.
Yeah.
So I don't...
Again, yeah, that could be the launch point. Right? Something happened in that place. That was that final trigger.
I hope it's not Julia, because here's the thing with her, or Julie. I keep throwing Julia because it's Julia Pennyworth is the one I'm thinking of on the other end. But I hope it's Julie is still around, because to me it'd be very interesting to see what this means for Bruce and Julie afterwards. Do you know what I mean? Like, yes. I think that's a cool story. I agree with you that it's on the table that something could have happened to her, and that's what's driving this. He wasn't there as a passive individual, though, in that sequence of events, so I'm willing to bet, just by his very presence there, she's okay. That's what I would like to see, is, you know, by his presence there, it wasn't because something happened to her. It was, I mean, I don't know, what we saw with that little girl, that's enough to make me go,
it's time.
I'm either leaving town or I'm stepping up. I mean, so I don't know. I'm curious to see where it's going. Man, is this story just phenomenal.
I know.
This is one of those that, we talk a lot about absolute editions and what we want to see in absolute editions. I so want this in an absolute edition.
Oh God, yeah. This is definitely one of those I'm picking up in absolute.
Can we talk about collected editions just for a couple seconds? Yeah. I know this is kind of a weird topic to go off. I just got two of them that I want to shout out. For my birthday, my birthday was January 19th, and one of my buddies got me Batman the Golden Age Omnibus, Volume 1. Now, I've been collecting some of these issues digitally, and I had those. Remember they were releasing those Batman chronological books for a while? So I was getting those, and I quite liked them. But the one thing that I didn't like about those, the archive editions were always hardcover. And I don't know, something about classic stories like that, I like them in a hardcover volume. This Golden Age Omnibus is incredible. I cannot recommend it enough. I've got it in my hand right now. I'm just kind of pulling out to take a look at it. This has Detective Comics 27 to 56, Batman 1 through 7, New York World's Fair Comics number 2, World's Best Comics number 1, World's Finest Comics 2 and 3, and the forwards by Denny O'Neil, which I'm actually a fan in volumes like this of forwards. But the page quality in this, for omnibus volumes, a lot of times they'll like skimp on the page quality. The page quality is very crisp, and the visuals are very, very much like a remastered kind of high quality printing of them. This just feels like a quality volume. But I also got the Absolute, this is kind of a birthday present for myself. I got the Absolute Green Arrow Green Lantern volume by Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams. Nice. Oh, man, is that a gorgeous volume, because I'm a big fan of the Neil Adams artwork. I jumped onto Batman more in the Jim Aparo era, where that's the one that I first started recognizing. I read issues with Neil Adams artwork, and actually more familiar with Neil Adams from like book and record sets and things like that. But Jim Aparo was really my Batman artist that I started to recognize the name, I should say. Neil Adams, it wasn't because I didn't read any Neil Adams work. It was more of I think I was too young to, start looking at creators. I was more looking at the characters and the pretty pictures. Neil Adams, though, oh my gosh, the landmark. I'm going to get this signed, actually. Neil Adams is coming to the Cleveland Comic-Con, the Wizard one, February. So I'm going to go there and have Neil Adams sign the Absolute Edition.
Oh, cool.
Just because it's a cool volume. I can't recommend this enough, though. If you haven't read the Hard Traveling Hero stuff, it's all of it collected in this volume. And if you have read it, I would get it just because of the amazing artwork. Because does it look good on those big pages? So I don't know. Those collected editions are still. Do you find yourself? Are you picky and choosy as far as which absolutes you grab? Because this month Preacher's one of them, and I pre-ordered that.
Yeah, I did too.
I needed that. That wasn't a want. That was a need.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm still getting a lot of them, and I think it's. I'm trying to not get every single one that comes out just because of financially speaking, but there's like stories like this one I'm going to jump on when it comes out, and there's it depends on like a lot of the classic stories. I've picked up a lot of those because I think that's kind of a neat way to have them. Is this nice? I'm going to have a wall of absolutes basically.
I do find that. what I'm doing less of is I'm not like in a month where a cool absolute comes out, I won't buy like a deluxe edition hardcover or something like that. Do you know what I'm following me on that one? Where I'm like, well, that's a regular sized hardcover. Let me get the absolute because that will be a different visual experience, especially if it's something where the artwork really pops out at me. That's the absolute was my preference because I'm like, I'm more inclined to pick that up and reread that than I would the other edition, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's like with a trade paperback, I'm more likely to wait for a hardcover edition than the trade.
Okay.
You know, and I'm more if I start getting the absolutes, then I'll stop getting the hardcover and the trades, and I'll just go, I'm only going to get the absolutes now because that's, you know, where I'm going with this. But it's, you know, kind of or if I'm going to stick with the hardcover on some stuff, I'll stick with the hardcovers. You know, it's.
Hey, did you see that new Batman movie? Did you get that yet?
The no, I don't think I've gotten it yet.
Okay, because I get them on iTunes now. I do the pre-order on iTunes of those because they just seem to come out digitally right away, and I like it because, you know, I have an iPad and an iPhone, and Apple TVs in my house, so when I get it, it's like digitally available right away. I don't have to download it; I can just start watching. So I've been doing that, which is really nice on the digital end. So I do that with the DC digital release. I just pre-order them and then they come out. They seem to come out quicker, and
you know, they do come out quicker on the digital format. They do on the DVD. I'm
not sure why. I mean, you think they would try to like time that release so that they all come out at the same time, but I just want to recommend it. It's really cool because it's an original take on a story we've seen before. It's what if Batman quote unquote dies, and who would replace him? You know, that type of thing. They play out that storyline, and it's an original story. That it takes elements of things that we've seen before, but it's done in an original format. It's really well done. The next movie, though, in the series is going to be Justice League versus the Teen Titans.
Right.
And it's going to be the first time Damian's shown on the Teen Titans as a full-fledged member.
Oh, nice.
Because Damian's the Robin on this Teen Titans team. So, which isn't... But Damian's been in Teen Titans books before, but he's never been the Robin on Teen Titans.
Right. He's never been a full member.
Right. So... It's going to continue the storylines. It's kind of a convergence of the storylines that are going on in the Bat films and the Justice League films and converging them together. So it's going to be the full Justice League team that we've seen in those movies and the Teen Titans team in on this one. So that one looks really cool as well. If you're not picking up these DC original animated releases, I can't recommend them enough. Let me know when you get that Batman one because we really should do it on the show because we know we did that Justice League one. Let's do this.
Right. Okay.
Just because it was fun. I mean, even if we do like a short segment on it, not short for us, but you know, like a normal segment for everybody else, I would really like to talk about that because I thought it was really cool, and I'd love to get your take on it.
Cool.
To the Batmobile. Let's go. Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed. You're ready to move up.
So, Jim, let's jump in. This will be the first of a two-part discussion likely on television, just because of the fact that we're not going to want to cut short any of our discussion about these great programs. But let's start first with the new Vertigo series that's launched, Lucifer. And I know you and I have both read the Lucifer comic, and that was your first exposure to Lucifer. Now you've gotten to see the first episode of the television program. What do you think? Lucifer as a show? Are you interested? Are you in? What do you like about the whole premise behind it? Did you like it, actually? Because I did. I'm a big fan of the Lucifer character. I thought they did it really great justice on television. Like, I was like, wow, they hit a home run with this. But that was my impression. You're newer to the game on this one. Is this a thing for you?
See, I'm really, really new. Other than I've got I could say I have no experience with the Lucifer comic. So I'm really going into this completely new and blind. And all in all, it's a good show. It was entertaining. There was a couple times when I was laughing out loud. So I think, if you get me laughing, that's going to keep me into it. And there was some stuff where I was like, kind of curious about this. And I will admit that I'm wondering where they're going to go with this. Is this because there's some stuff I got thinking in my head where I see. I see Lucifer losing his powers. I see him actually making a turn from being, the fallen angel to being more human. And actually kind of you think about the concept of where angels could actually have free will and they could actually choose to stop being angels and become humans, and they can actually do the fall to humanity. Whereas, and I kind of see, Lucifer having that same option and not realizing he's doing it. Because of his interaction with people, he becomes more human and more mortal. And, those are the kind of directions I'm thinking this show is going to go. But on the other hand, he is Lucifer. He could maybe just be lulling everybody into a nice the sense of, a nice soft sense of security there, thinking, oh, Lucifer's really calming and gentle, and he's warm, and fuzzy and puppy dogs. And he goes, no, I am Lucifer. Bam, and he hits them. So there could definitely be some darkness that pops up. And I think that's kind of my wondering where it's going to go is mostly my interest in the show.
I like that he's a bad guy. I mean, I'm pretty clear on that. But that's not the whole story. And that there is a heart in there. And you could see that, you got to remember he's a fallen angel, but that means that he was an angel. So, it's not as simple as, he's all evil, the root of all evil. But yet he gets a twisted pleasure in that side of himself too. But yet he got tired of it being all of that. He wanted something more. And it's funny how, in Earth, he's finding that something more. I love that he's used to manipulating any female and getting what he wants from her. And when he finds the one he can't, that fascinates him.
Yeah.
And I guess my question with him would be, what happens if she all of a sudden starts to fall for him? Will some of that be lost? You know what I mean? Like if now that he's attained his goal, it's always something interesting with a character like that. Is it just the fascination with the fact that she can stand up to him? If they were actual true equals, would it lose its luster to him? I don't know. He fascinates me.
Yeah. And it's funny because if you look at him as a character, you would say, no, that'd be a good thing and be a growth. But he's not a character. He's Lucifer. So sure. I'm going to guess that when he starts realizing he's losing control and he is losing the power, that's where we're going to see his true nature come out. Because in a couple times in the episode, you saw him being this nice guy, where he helped out, he felt bad for the singer, that he had helped out before. And Chloe, I love the fact that
was that Chloe?
What?
Was that Chloe? Yeah. Or was that Delilah?
Yeah, that was Delilah. Yeah.
Okay. She's that was cool, actually, the relationship with her. What I liked about him was he felt some responsibility towards her. And the way that she was taken out and what happened to her was something that he took as an affront. There is a code of honor to him, which is interesting. And I find it, I think we're in an era with interesting television right now. We've got like Supergirl and The Flash, which I think are my consummate good guy shows. It's really clear that they're on the brightest side of the spectrum. Arrow's where it starts to shift, if that makes any sense. He's still clearly a good guy, and I think he's shifted more over to the good side as the show's gone on, but there's still, that show tends to be darker in its presentation. As you go through Gotham, obviously, he starts to take us a little further down that spectrum because of all the crazy that's going on there. And Lucifer's really on the opposite end of the spectrum in its presentation, because I have no doubt in my mind he's a bad guy, but he's a bad guy with a code. And I find that fascinating, his code. And it's one of the things that I really loved about the first episode of the show was they didn't water him down, and try to make him out to be this he's this great guy who's just misunderstood. No, he's a bad dude.
He's not misunderstood. He is, the Prince of Darkness. And they're making sure we do know that. And I liked with how, with all his powers, he couldn't save her, but he was going to basically avenge her.
Right.
But it wasn't just about vengeance. a good guy is going to help somebody and save somebody about, to do the right thing. He's doing it more for the fact that he took it as a personal insult against him. How dare you take out one of mine?
Yeah.
And that's what it was more about, his search. Now, is he always going to be that way? I don't know. Like, you think about, with the ending there where he wanted that guy to be tortured. He wanted that man to suffer who had done this. He hunted, when he, and it was even that moments where the guy's like, oh no, you're not going to die quick. You're not going to die sudden. You're not going to get away that easily. You're going to suffer. And you see the darkness come out in that moments. But throughout the episode, there were funny moments and funny bits that he was, kind of, making people laugh, and you're laughing at it. As Ed, there's a couple times when I just laughed out loud when you saw just him doing stuff to people. The wedding scene when he's able to compel people basically to just tell their darkest secrets or tell their thing, and he's out there talking to the bride, going, "You really don't love him? Oh God, no! You don't want to sleep with him? Oh no!" Right at the guy's wedding, his bride to be is saying she really doesn't love him, doesn't want anything to do with him. She's just basically using him for the money. And I loved that sequence because you saw it completely coming, and everybody in that audience who's watching at the wedding was thinking that, and he got the bride to confess it at the altar.
It was the greatest thing in the world. And it was so matter-of-factly. Like, she was saying it like it was, just kind of something that she would say to any of her friends, casually. It was absolutely brilliant how that played out. And I love the way that it just felt wicked. I mean, that's one of the things I really like about the show. It plays off of its premise so well, and it's unapologetic about it. I think one of the things that comic adaptations are doing very well right now, instead of trying to, kind of make itself appropriate for a television audience or something like that, they're embracing the premise, making that premise work on television. Sometimes they make the mistake of trying to make them too TV, and they lose the premise and try to turn it into a certain show that fits into a category that's already existed. If I'm making any sense at all by what I'm saying there, it's you lose the unique nature of it, and it feels like something that's already been done before. This does not feel like anything that's been done before, and I really like that part of it. iZombie is another show that doesn't feel like something that's been done before. That's one of the nice things about them putting some of these Vertigo concepts on television. They're being done in a way that is true the original source material. Yeah, they make some adjustments and changes for television, but not to the premise. And I think that's really what I'm getting at there. There's been times where I think we've all gotten annoyed because they completely lose the premise.
Yeah.
This is great because it doesn't, and that's the part that's fascinating. I find myself rooting for him knowing that I shouldn't.
Right.
And that's what you should feel wrong.
Yeah.
You should feel wrong about it.
Yeah, and that's where I'm wondering where they're going to go with the character, what they're going to do with him. One of the things that did crack me up is the fact that the character's name is Lucifer Morningstar. And he's telling people, my name is Lucifer. And I love that when the little girl, when Trixie was like in the devil, he goes, yes.
I like that she liked him, though.
Yeah.
I thought that, and I liked that the mom was acknowledging the fact that she doesn't like many people and that she did like him because I think she sees that even though it's, he's like the devil and all that kind of thing, she does see the other side of him that we see as viewers as well. It's not as simple as that. There's the code of honor. And as much as he says that he gets annoyed by little children or something like that, his acknowledgement that she's decidedly less annoying, I think is a sign that he does like her. And it's hard for him to admit that. And I like that part because it makes the character more complex. It doesn't take away from my fact that I really will always think of him as a bad guy just because of knowing who he is and what his whole nature is. But I like that I don't feel it's simple. I find it fascinating that I don't think that it's simple. And I can't wait to see more of the program because of it, like where it's going to go. As a television premise, it has a lot of potential. The trick is to maintain the balance of Lucifer being a bad guy with a code.
Right.
You want to always keep that line there. There's going to be times where Lucifer is going to clearly disappoint those around him because he's going to be Lucifer being out for Lucifer.
And you need to have that.
Yes.
That's something that they need to make sure they don't lose. And I don't want him to become a good guy. I don't ever want to think, oh, he's not a bad guy. I always want to know, yes, he is, Lucifer. Yes, he is, who he is. And that's something to be honest, it's something I'm worried about, because this is on television. And a lot of times television, they don't want, pure darkness and pure evil. They don't want, they want it to be a rom-com where in the end you're like, oh, the bad boy was really a nice guy all along. He had a heart of gold and the right girl came along and brought it out in him. I don't want that from this show, and it's, and I'm hoping that we're not going to get it, but again, as I always say, I look at what could possibly go wrong. And for me, that would be the thing that goes wrong, where they lose the fact that he is a bad guy.
Did you watch Dexter?
Yes, I did.
Okay. This should be like Dexter.
Exactly. At no point in time, really, did you think Dexter was a good guy.
Right.
He had moments where he did good things, and he had moments where he was a nice guy, but he wasn't a good guy. He was a serial killer. The entire time you knew he was a serial killer. And there were those moments where in every episode where you would see that flash in his eye where you're like, he really is a bad guy.
I like the other angel as a Menadil or something like that. It was D.B. Woodside plays the angel. And I like that this point is, listen, you're like rocking the whole boat because you are supposed to be the guardian of all this darkness and demons and keeping them at bay. If you're not there's no gatekeeper. They can just come out and do whatever they want. And that's becoming a problem. It does put a certain responsibility on the role of the fallen angel and what he does. And how you get to the point where he's like, well, I held that job for long enough, and I don't want to do that anymore.
I'm wondering if they're going to that's one of the things I was wondering with the show, if they're going to start making a shift where he starts becoming the Dark Angel. And he actually takes on the role of Lucifer as the gatekeeper. And I'm wondering if, to me, I would see if they did that, that would start the shift of power away from Lucifer. He would start losing his power and he would start becoming immortal. Well,
I don't want to say too much because I know some of the premise of the comics with relation to that. I will say I will say this. Some of what you're saying are things that the comics have addressed in multiple different ways. Because the comic series, the first run of it, had a long history. This new series that's launching is, kind of reintroducing the whole concept again. So if they're going off of the previous comic series, which it looks like that's what they're doing here, yes, they will play around with things like that. Now, I did not read it closely enough. I mean, I read trades of it, but I have not read all of it. So I don't know if Amenadiel was in those comics, to be honest. I'm very curious to see where this is going to go as far as a lot of what you're saying. I actually want to read more of the comics because of this. I want to read because I liked the relaunch so much that I'm like, oh, this has got me kind of reinvigorated to Lucifer again. Because Lucifer spun out of Sandman.
Right.
Is where it came from as a series and a concept. Like many other comics that spun out of Sandman, this was one of those that did. And it was actually one of the more successful ones that spun out of Sandman. So I'm curious to see where this does go from here. And I'm glad they chose to make this a TV series because as a first episode, well, let me ask you this. See, for me, obviously I have more history with the comics than you do, but I will say this, not much. I'm on board. I think it's a unique concept, and the first episode had enough into it that it really is unique compared to anything else I'm watching right now. So I'm on board moving forward as long as they keep this premise going. Where were you at? Because I know you don't have any real attachment to it. Is this something that you're like, I'm very interested in watching this, or I'm just watching it because we do this podcast?
Oh no, it's more than just because of the podcast. I am interested in it. Again, I said it was a good show, so it's a good show, and I did laugh, and it's one of those things where I'm going to see what happens with it. I could see this end up getting. Just stockpiled, a couple episodes at a time just because of time-wise. Mm-hmm. This isn't like, with Flash and Supergirl, I jump to those, and those are my 1 and 2 that I watch. I can't always, I never watch a show live just because of time wise, but usually the next day I'll watch it, or if I'm not able to watch it the next day, I'll have a Saturday or Sunday where I just sit back and I watch TV. Flash, Supergirl are 2 I jump to right away. Lucifer will be recorded, but it may not be. There may be a couple weeks in a row that it gets recorded and I don't watch it. It's good, but it's not, oh my God, good.
You know what I end up doing with these shows, most of them, just because of the fact that I ended up buying I usually buy on TV shows that are, geek culture ones that I really love. I end up buying the box sets anyway of the DVDs. With these, I've been buying them on iTunes. So I watch them the next day. I don't watch them the day that they air because what happens is on iTunes, the episode's available the next morning. So if it airs on Monday, it's available on Tuesday.
Oh, cool.
And I like watching it without the commercials. So it's nice just to have the show digitally ready. And like I said, I have an Apple TV. So, that's nice because I just end up watching it that way. I honestly am at a point where I could cut the cable. There's certain programs that my wife really likes that are on, our Uverse that you can't get, through like Hulu or Netflix or something like that. So we keep the cable for that reason. But I really like now just getting a season. If it's something that I know I love, I'll just grab it through iTunes and I just own the season and then just start watching it at my leisure. It's nice the next day to be able to watch it and not have to fast forward through commercials. It just goes. It's really nice. So it's nice when you have a stockpile too, because you just kind of keep watching through the stockpile, which is fun. But you mentioned Supergirl. Can we just start talking about that show? Because
yeah.
I had such an interesting journey with Supergirl. I don't know what yours was like. The first couple episodes, I don't know what it was for me. They felt a little slow. I've since watched them again, and I really liked them. So I don't know what my disconnect was, but I was kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to, how into this one I'm going to be. And then after that, it was like episode 3. Everything just clicked and came together for me, and I really found myself loving the show. I love the supporting cast. I love that it's not just about Kara. I actually find that I love her. I think the casting's brilliant now because I find that I love both of her identities, and that's really critical. I need to believe in her when she's out of the costume just as much as when she's in. And the key to when she's out of the costume is that her supporting cast out of the costume is just as interesting as her supporting cast when she's in the costume. And that's something I think the show has crafted marvelously well. I did not need the reveal of Hank Henshaw to make me love the series. That just added to it.
Yeah, it was funny because when my path with this show was the first episode, I was like, yeah, that's really good. I like that. And I thought I loved Callista Flockhart as Cat Grant.
Oh, yes.
Because I'm like, I was sitting there going, you know what? They really got her down. And with her and her little, I don't want to say throughout Scooby Gang, but her and her group of friends and her team outside of the cowl, outside of the cape, I was like, okay, what's going to be this? By second and third episode, I really digged her supporting cast and her structure. But right from the beginning, I was like, yeah, this is good. And by episode 3, I was saying, they really got her down. They got Supergirl down, but they really got Cat Grant down. And I think that for me from the beginning has been how well Cat Grant was written. And then with the Hank Henshaw, dude, I called it. Right from the very beginning, I was like, man, something's up with her. I'm like, are they doing a Martian Manhunter with him? And I was like, oh my God. And then when they finally do reveal, like, I was hooping and hollering, I'm cheering in my house going, yes, yes, yes. Just because I dig the character, and I think he's a good spot in this show.
So you were thinking that more than Cyborg Superman?
Yes. Well, when they said Hank Henshaw, I was like, oh boy, Cyborg Superman could be kind of interesting. And then when they had the one scene when they showed his eyes flash red,
right?
I'm like, wait a minute, they're not doing Cyborg. Is he the Martian Manhunter? And that was the first thought that popped in my head, because I kept saying, because when they first say the name, I immediately started thinking Cyborg Superman. And I was talking to my sister, and I'm like, there's going to be something going on with Hank, and I didn't want to spoil it for her. I'm like, all I told her was Hank Henshaw is a name in the comic book universe. Oh, okay. I'm like, something's going to happen there, but then when I saw the eyes flash red, I'm like, are they doing Martian Manhunter? And I was like,
wow.
So then I'm going through that whole process going, he's not, and then as things started really developing, I'm like, before the final reveal, I was 100% convinced that he was Martian Manhunter.
Oh, I was not even close to that. So yay, you. I thought that they were doing the Cyborg storyline with him. My question was, is he going to be good? Is he going to be bad? What are they doing with this? I totally thought they were going. So yay, you, that you even caught it that way. I thought the flash of the eyes was more the indication that he's not, fully human.
Right.
And that, there is a cyborg component to him already. So I thought they were teasing that he's a bad guy, a wolf in sheep's clothing, so to speak.
And they definitely were teasing that, and I can completely see why anyone would think that. But for me, it was and I think part of it is because of the actor, because he looks very similar to the actor who played Martian Manhunter on Smallville.
Okay.
They look like they could, in my mind, they look like they could actually be family members. And I think that for me was the connection why I saw Martian Manhunter, because I'm looking going, yeah, and I'm like, he kind of looks like him. It even looks like how he was drawn in a lot of the comics and a lot of the animated series when they showed the Justice League animated series. So I think that for me was the thing that pulled me into thinking Martian Manhunter.
He's great. Honestly, I honestly will say that he is so far the best. I loved what they did in Smallville with him, but I think this has taken it to the next level, because this is everything that I love about Martian Manhunter. Martian Manhunter is a character to get right, because he's a character that sometimes can come off as too wooden, and you lose the heart of the character. These moments that you have where, especially with the whole White Martian sequence and what was going on in Mars and his backstory and the emotion, there's points in time in this series where he's a very powerful guy, but he's almost been paralyzed in certain situations, especially with the White Martian, to act. And it's interesting to take a character that we've seen in such a role of strength early on in those moments where he's almost unable to act. And I really loved the development of that character. This show does that very well, because I think that every character, James Olsen, I think, has been incredibly well developed. Win Shot, I did not see that being Toyman's kid, because they kept referring to him as Win. We never knew the last name.
Right.
I loved that reveal. And the fact that, Kara's got this, they're using the Danvers family name, and they've got Alex, the stepsister, or the foster sister, and the parents, and that there's a history there. I loved what they did with all of that. I love the sister relationship between the two of them, and how her being a part of the DEO has led to Kara having a story when she's Supergirl, besides being Supergirl in isolation. It really has separated into two supporting casts that do have overlap. And I like that part of this a great deal. The fact that there's some people in both worlds in the know of both worlds, and there's other people who are not. Yeah. And it does make her world far more interesting. And if anything, it has helped us to get to know her to the point where I am a huge believer in her as Supergirl. I think what she's done is fantastic. I don't know why the first two episodes had such a disconnect for me. Like I said, I did watch them again, and I'm like, I don't know what was wrong. Because I actually quite like them now that I've watched them again. I love that there's a Krypton factor to all this that's been really well developed, too. They've covered a lot of ground in a short time, I think, with this series, and developed a very rich world. National City is very well developed as a city, and a valid, viable city, with Kat being kind of the head of the media in that area. It's shown that you can take concepts like the Daily Planet and make them work today, in today's world and society.
Yeah.
That part, Lucy Lane's phenomenal as well.
And Max Lord, come on.
Oh, that's a whole other discussion. Go for it.
Yeah, I tell you, when they first introduced the character of Max Lord, I cheered. That was another one I cheered. I was like, oh man, okay. They're like, initially you start going through your head, okay, does he have the powers? Does he not have powers? Is he just Max Lord, super intelligent multi-billionaire, or is he Max Lord, super intelligent multi-billionaire with powers? And the jury is still kind of out for me. I'm not 100% convinced that he doesn't have powers yet, or he's not going to get them in the future. I see him, because he starts experimenting with powers and just with, the various supernatural type of, meta-human type of environment and aliens and whatnot. I can see this character, Max Lord, eventually tinkering him with himself, and he actually develops the mental powers that he had before, that he had in the comic. And I think that's going to be kind of an interesting, way to go with him. But even as he is right now, he is a great, great villain for her, and I'm very excited where his potential to go.
Yeah, I agree. I love General Stan Lane. I love the casting of that character. I think has been really, really great in this one.
Yeah.
They brought in Cameron Chase, who I think worked really well in the show as well. It's great to see more from characters from the mythos brought in. James Olsen, I like the fact that Kara has feelings for James Olsen that are there. He's got this relationship with Lucy Lane, and I get why the two of them have, this kind of thing going on with them. It's clear he has feelings for her too, but doesn't quite know how to resolve them. Did you see the episode with Cat Grant's son?
Yes. Oh yeah. I'm completely caught up on this one. This is one of those where I jumped to it.
Yeah, it's become for me a very much a must-watch show. When a new episode comes out, because I get an email in the morning, your newest episode of such and such show has come through. I get so excited for that. Sometimes I'll watch it in the morning with breakfast before work. I kick off the morning which is very strange for me to do.
Yeah.
But,
the episode with the cat's son, really, again, it showed within the span of that one episode, you got to see all the different factions of Cat Grant. And I loved seeing Kara or whatever Cat's going to call her this week.
Kira,
yeah. Deal with the two of them, where she basically was the mediator and she was the translator. What she means by that is just what he means by, and I love just how she was just, completely, she sees that Cat Grant. She sees that good side of her. Yeah, but she acknowledges how a lot of people think she is just purely narcissistic. Well, guess what? There's a reason people think that, because of, there is a little bit of that in her. There is that character in her, but there is that good, and that she lets her guard down. And I love those moments where she's trusting Kara with the secrets. She's trusting her with the side of her. And, those were some great episodes, and especially in bringing, I know the son's not going to be around for a while, for a lot of episodes. I think he's only going to be around for like 2 episodes or 3 or something like that. But he's a character I hope they keep bringing back reoccurring. Yeah,
because I thought he was really good. I actually like that he asked the question. He's like, so is it Kira or Kara? Because and her answer was, it's Kara to basically everybody else on the planet and beyond. Which was great. Speaking of and beyond, the actress playing Allura and the sister, the twins, I thought it's doing a really great job. It's very hard, I think, to play a twin, especially with a twin with such different personality traits as these two. And she makes you believe that they're two different people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely a good job on that end. And it's because, when you get the same actor or actress playing a twin, they could very easily fall into a trap where I'm the same person, but you got to make sure there's distinct characteristics, and not just dialogue. It's their mannerisms, their physical presence, how they, like the scene when they showed that flashback in Krypton with the two of them, when she was playing the two sisters, just facial expressions, body movement, just everything she did a really good job making it seem like she was two different people. And I thought that was a kind of a sequence I really digged.
Now, at the end of the most recent episode, we have what looks like an evil Supergirl doing horrible things. I'm very curious to see where that storyline is going to go, because she was sitting there with her
sister, yeah.
And they were sitting there watching that. But this is a lot of what her sister's been trying to protect her from coming to fruition. It's also a lot of what Hank/John has also been worried about himself being revealed and, having this kind of thing happen. So now this is actually happening, which is going to cause some turmoil for Kara. One of the things that I really like about this show in particular is it can portray the dark aspects of our media and how it will cloud the world and make it harder for somebody to be tried and true, the dun-dun-dun hero and that type of thing. But I love that for Kara, it hasn't taken away any of that. She is bright. She is likable. She is distraught when she's misunderstood, and she constantly is trying to do the right thing and just be a good person. And that has not been sacrificed. It still has an edge. And it's a very interesting edge. I think far more interesting because of the fact that she is so good. And when you see moments like that and you're like, whoa, especially at this point in time in the show where she's been so established, that is interesting and compelling to me because we know she's such a good character. I want to see where that goes.
Yeah. Yeah. And did you see the title of the next week's episode?
I did not. What is it?
Bizarro.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, I saw that. I was like, oh, my God, that's who that is. So, and again, that's a neat concept that they're pulling into this, that it's, and my guess is the unconscious person who Max Lord has been experimenting on. That's who that is, and that's who's going to be the doppelganger. And I'm assuming we're going to have the whole Bizarro thing where the face basically falls off or stones up, or it's not a clean copy. So it's going to actually do something else, and she's going to become somebody else. So I think that's kind of a neat. Again, that's when they start experimenting with stuff like that. When they start doing that, and I'm like, that's kind of cool, So I don't know. It's one of the things that I also really loved was the fact that Cat Grant figured out her secret identity. That was something I cheered at because she is a reporter, because she is intelligent, and she is present with both of them, and she would be able to put two and two together, and she would be able to figure it out. I was so happy that she figured it out.
Equally cool was the resolution of that, though.
Yeah. Oh, of course.
And using the Martian Manhunter to make that happen, I thought was absolutely fantastic. Speaking of those effects, I love the Martian Manhunter transition effects. I think the John Jones costume and the way he looks is fantastic. I love the shape-shifting. I also love the flight effects of the show and the combat. I thought the sequence with the White Martian, where the two of them were fighting the White Martian, was really cool.
Yeah.
It looked very believable, and it just shows how today's effects can be used to really make that look good. I actually like that better than the Kryptonians fight, which I really liked as well. But I just thought the White Martian one, just being able to have both of them fight, it just added a different sort of visual dynamic that we didn't have. The original Kryptonian fight I thought was very reminiscent of what we saw in Man of Steel, which I liked, so that isn't a knock. But I thought that this was, the White Martian fight I thought felt very fresh.
Yeah, and it had a lot more of, I think part of it was because the White Martian was a CGI creation, really.
Yeah.
And when you get that, whereas you get two humans fighting, that the actual actors are on wires and they're doing all that kind of fight sequences. So I think, with having it be purely digital, you could actually have more fluidness and more flow to it.
I actually wonder how much they do the wire work in those cases, because I'd be curious to see the behind the scenes on that, and how much it makes more sense to just do that digital. I would be curious to see. Because you can obviously do digital with, human actors as well.
Right. Well, I'm assuming wire because how good they look when they're flying and when they're fighting. Because you can usually spot a CGI digital, flight and fight, usage, whereas opposed to if it's an actual person, two people actually swinging at each other. You can tell.
You're talking about that flight with her fighting her aunt?
Right.
When they were flying through the city, you thought that was wire work?
No, that wasn't.
Okay, I was going to say.
I'm talking the actual fight in the park, and all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm talking about when they were flying through the city.
Okay.
Because we had a similar flight combat that was going on there to the White Martian one when they were flying through the city, and it looked like in Man of Steel when Zod and Clark were fighting. It was the same kind of rapid visual between buildings and stuff when they were fighting there.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I thought that was very much like Man of Steel, and I liked it. Don't get me wrong. It's not a knock on that type of visual. I like it. But I thought that this was a much more unique presentation when the two of them were fighting. You're right. In the park, I think that was more wire work and those type of things. And I get why you're saying that now. I was like sitting there, I'm like, what is he talking about? No, I was talking. I was
using wires when flying through it.
No, I'm like sitting there, like, that wire work. I'm like, oh my God, they would have killed him if they were throwing them at that speed. And I mean, even if they sped up the camera, there's no way they're doing that on them on wires. Can we talk Legends of Tomorrow?
Oh God, yeah. Yeah.
There was I'm actually surprised I didn't start with this one for obvious reasons as a Hawkman fan. There's very few ways to nail a character, and everything I love about the Hawkman, Hawkgirl concept is here in this show. And done so well. I love the way that their wings work. I love the fact that they brought in the reincarnation story. I love that they charge into battle with a person who is so obviously out to kill them and gains more power every time he does. Just the whole premise of the story just really worked for me. I like the Vandal Savage twist, actually, having Vandal Savage be the one that has killed them. We saw this for the first time in the Flash and Arrow crossover, where it was really kind of broadcast who these characters were, but I love that this spun out of that. And I'm making this sound like it's the Hawkman show, but it's not. It's but one of the things I like about it is if you go through each of the characters, I think it nailed them so well. And because of that, putting this mishmash of misfits together has made this one of the more entertaining shows, I think, on television right now. 2 episodes in, and I am a huge fan.
Tweet, tweet, tweet. Oh! I saw that scene. I'm like, oh, poor Sean. Oh, yeah.
Well, he can come back.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, granted, and if he died in 1975, that means he was reborn as a baby in 75, which would put him at the age he was at 2016.
Right.
So this was it was funny because I immediately started doing the math going, oh, okay, so the character that his age he was at 2016 when he was recruited had to die at this age.
Yeah.
Which because you look at Hawkgirl, because she's younger, the actor's younger, so she's got a couple more years for a timeline continuity type thing to go on. So, but I'm going to agree with you on their handling of the Hawks. I'm going to agree with you 100% on, just the concept of the show. I absolutely love this show, and I'm in by issue 2. The only thing I wish, and I don't want to come across as I'm being negative towards the way the character was created, but Rip Hunter. Because I love his story in the comic and who his nature and everything that he was. Part of me wishes it wasn't Rip Hunter, it was somebody else.
Why?
It was a different Time Lord or Time Master. Because Rip Hunter's story that was crafted in the comic book universe is such an awesome story that I would like to see that version of that character come into here, because that character would come in with Booster Gold, with everything. And that part of me, I don't know. And I'm not knocking.
Wait, here's the thing.
The show.
How do you know the kid's not going to be Booster Gold?
Well,
because here's the thing. I'm not entirely convinced the son died.
Well, Booster's not Rip's son.
Yes, he is.
No, Rip is Booster's
Rip is
son.
Booster's son. I'm sorry, flip flop. You're right. Oh yeah. Well, how do we know that that's not still the case?
Well, it may still be out there, but
you're right. I reversed it.
Doesn't seem as likely the way they're playing the story.
Oh, then I'm going to change my mind. I think the kid's dead. Yeah, because I guess I was thinking that it was the reverse, and I got my wires crossed on that one.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that this storyline negates Booster being the dad.
But even just the whole, I like the Time Council and all that. That's kind of the Time Masters and all that. And but I don't know. I liked in the comic how Rip was this grand mystery. That's part of he had to be this mystery. He didn't have a connection. He didn't have anywhere where you could go and say, I'm going to kill Rip Hunter. I'm going to be at this spot. Whereas this Rip Hunter kind of has a timeline, kind of has a continuity that other time villains could take advantage of. And True. I like the character. Don't get me wrong. I like the show. I just wish he was some other name other than Rip Hunter. That's the only connection. Only thing I would say. But the fact that they're doing it, I don't have an issue with, really. And because I don't want to come across and say, oh, it's terrible. It's not. This is a really cool show, and I'm really digging it, and I'm in on it. But that's just the one thing I wish.
Okay, let's go here with this, though. Do we know that Vandal Savage knows that it was Rip Hunter? Like, how do we know that was his name when his family was killed?
Well, I'm assuming he knows who, because in the opening episode he kills his wife and kills his son. Are you more like your father or your mother? And all that. So I'm assuming he knows who those parents were, and he knows that Rip is the parent.
Okay.
So I'm making assumptions based on information I don't know yet. But it seems to me in this universe, Rip has more of a stable timeline and a more of a stable, presence that a time villain could could take advantage of it. That's the only thing that I wish they didn't completely have in this.
Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting.
But other than that, I'm telling you, I don't want to come across as like I'm being negative. Like Vandal Savage being half set. I like the fact that they combined the two into there and how they're connected with him, Hawkgirl and Hawkman and him. And I like that usage. Now, granted, the original story of Vandal Savage being being the caveman who has the meteorite land at his feet and blah, 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 all that kind of stuff, where he huddles it to say, that's a cool story. I'm not knocking that at all, and I like that. But this version of it, this televised, this television universe version of it, I don't have an issue with because they've kept enough of the craziness and the barbaric nature of Vandal Savage. They kept enough of that, and they kept enough of the strength of the character that makes him such a cool villain. They pulled that into this, and the same thing can be said for Rip Hunter. They did keep a lot of that character, that quality that Rip has.
But there's certain key traits that you really like about Rip Hunter that you wish were there. And I don't know that I can argue with that. I'm with you. I do like the fact that I always liked the idea that Rip Hunter was a code name to protect his family and protect himself, so that way nobody could go back through time and erase him. That premise, and that it looks like that isn't in existence here. So at least the way it looks right now, that is something that I either hope that they do explain into the story, or that's a part that you're right. I like that, and it's missing.
I'm going to confess something. I was a bit of an idiot.
Okay.
When I watched the first episode, I'm watching going, man, I've seen Rip from somewhere before, and I couldn't place my finger on it. So I jumped on IMDb and I'm looking, I click on his name and I go, Rory. Oh, I'm an idiot. He looks different than what he kind of did. He had that fresh face look in, Doctor Who that he doesn't have here. I was like, man, that's awesome.
And that may be why I give that kind of a lot of leeway, because I'm really enjoying him in this program and in this role. And how they're handling it. I really do think he's kind of the glue that holds everyone together with the whole time travel concept. I think the people that really have shined for me so far, Ray Palmer. Oh my gosh, Brandon Routh has so spun out of Smallville into a great role here. The new Firestorm team, I think, is great. It's interesting they created a brand new character to team up with Martin Stein, and I really quite like that. He's cool, and I like the difference between the two of them, and they have to deal with learning how to appreciate the strengths that each other brings to the table, and I think that's really working on the program for me right now. But man, when you put Heatwave, Captain Cold, and Sarah Lance together in a bar, it is some of the funniest bits. I think I love the 70s. That stuff was so awesome.
Heatwave and Captain Cold, those two are outstanding together.
Oh yes,
and it's they were in the one TV show, drawing a blank now, Prison Break. They were in the Prison Break together. They played brothers. Here they're still kind of playing brothers, and they get those two actors really jive well together.
Yes, they do.
And you add, Sarah Lance to that, and I was like, man, these three, this right here is a great combo. And I digged when they're in the 70s, man, and they saw the younger version of Marty Stein. I was like, oh my God.
That was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And Victor Garber, who plays Martin Stein, is so awesome. I think what it is with this cast, it's such a diverse group of people. They play so well off of each other. with their interactions, when they appreciate each other for certain things and when they get annoyed with each other about certain things, it feels so natural because they're so well written and so well acted that I think everybody's bringing something unique to the table. Very quickly in 2 episodes, this has just become a favorite cast of mine. I mean, just seeing all of them play off together because of the fact that I think they spun an appropriate amount of them out of other programming. And, like Rip Hunter being the glue that kind of made sense why all these characters are together. It just really works.
Well, they've got solid actors doing their roles. And all the shows have, they've got solid, portrayals, but you really look at these actors and some of the stuff they've done and they've gone through and you're like, this is some solid acting here. This is actually this isn't just a cool superhero story. There's actually stuff going on. And I love I love when when you dabble with time, things going to change and things going to get tweaked around with, especially like with Dr. Stein, with how initially he lost his wife, how initially with all the dealing with his younger self didn't go to that faculty mixer, never met his wife, and his ring just disappears from his hand. But Rip fix it in the end. And I thought those were some really cool moments where it has the consequences. Time has its consequences. And anytime you have a good time travel show, you got to show that type of stuff. You got to have those little, this changes because of this. This didn't change because of that. You got to have the whole time continuity bubble going on.
Well, I love that the Captain Cold and Heatwave were not the least bit concerned when they were ripping things off on the consequences of any of that. I mean, I thought that's phenomenal. These guys are just embracing the idea of being villains, but they have a code. Because, at the end of the 2nd episode with what happened with Carter, Captain Cold's like, when you take out one of the members of my gang, I loved that bit because that's one of my favorite things about the Flash Rogues has always been this sense of honor to their group, honor to a certain code that they live by. I've always enjoyed that, and I love that this universe, this television universe, has embraced that, and having them on this show has just been awesome. One of my favorite guest stars in this was the Peter Francis James played Dr. Aldous Boardman, bringing the son in of one of the incarnations of Hawkman and Hawkgirl. That was something that I really loved about the premise. I do hope at some point, I hope they relaunch a Hawk series. I really do. But embrace this version. This idea, this reincarnation concept just made everything work. The Space Cop, all of it, it all just worked when they embraced this idea that they'd just been around forever and that they had previous lives. It made all the old previous stories work. And it provides cool moments like this one. I mean, that I thought was really great. It's what I dig about it. I think this is a character family that winds up in an identity crisis because you've either got writers that get the characters and what really makes them work or writers that don't. These television writers so get what makes these characters work. I am totally geeking out. It's like, really, if you're making a comic about the Hawks, watch 2 episodes of this. It's it. This is what you need to do. I will read this. This is what I want from my Hawkman comics right here. And I'm really digging that part. But I thought the emotion of that was very genuine. How they didn't remember, but as time went on, emotion took over. And they started to feel a connection. And there started to be certain memories there. Like when he gave the necklace to Kendra.
Yeah,
that was actually Kendra's, from when she was Shira during that era. It was such a cool thing. Seeing pictures of them with him when he were, at a fair when he was younger. I love that kind of stuff. I mean, that's talk about time travel, but also the reincarnation. You and I are big fans of the Highlander concept. And that is a piece of the Hawkman puzzle I really enjoy. It goes back to his Golden Age roots.
Yeah. And here's an interesting thing. I'm on IMDb right now.
Okay.
And because just so I can throw out if I need to throw out a name of a person. But I'm looking at, the Carter Hall.
Oh, I know.
He's listed as being in 16 episodes, like everybody else.
Well, that could either be, and I was thinking of that too. That could either be that could be flashbacks.
Right.
Because of Kendra's history. I'm hoping not, though.
I'm hoping not as well.
Well, I think it's going to be as well. I think it's going to be a little bit of both. I think we're going to have a few episodes of flashbacks and such, and then eventually, I don't know.
Although I think I saw some interview somewhere where they said we're not going to get a kid Carter Hall. We're not going to get a baby or a young version of Carter Hall. So if we get Carter Hall, we're going to get Carter Hall.
Yeah, which is cool.
And you think about it, because as we said, he dies in 75. He's back to the regular age by 2016, and they're in a time machine. So he can make a comeback.
I really enjoy the actor playing him. I think they've got really good casting there. Kendra's fantastic. I mean,
yes.
I think really the casting on this has been really, there's nobody I would swap out. I mean, it's really just a great, diverse cast. Oh, you know what I loved as a guest star in the second episode? Damien Dark.
Yeah.
I love seeing him back in the 70s leading a different faction.
I'm assuming that was his faction, just trying to do the thing. That was their beginning of Hive.
Right, but I don't think it was Hive yet, because I think they identified themselves, and I don't think it was identified as Hive. But to your point, even whether it was Hive or not, in its it was the early formation of what would become the Hive as we know them now. Because I don't remember them identifying themselves as Hive.
Yeah, I don't remember either.
But regardless, I do agree with your idea that this would have been the early foundations of it, regardless of the naming or not.
Yeah, because when you're dealing with Damien Dark, it's the whole, he's got that immortal thing going as well.
Yeah, which was really great to see him there. So I liked that he was. I'm pretty well connected in all of the underworld.
I don't know you.
Yeah. That was really cool how that played out, and Stein's ego kind of getting in the way there, where. Yeah. It was because of what he said there that it kind of revealed him. I really liked how that played out.
Right. This era.
Yes.
Whoops.
2 episodes in, dialogue was pretty key.
Yeah.
I really felt like dialogue and interaction between the whole team. I've got the iTunes version of it. And one of the things that I like watching some of the extras, but I also watched that half-hour show.
Yes.
Where did you watch that one?
Yeah, I watched that as well.
Wasn't that cool?
That was kind of a neat.
Because he was talking about the creator, Grant. I'm going to butcher it right now. He's the one involved in. I'm sorry, Greg Berlanti.
Yeah.
And I'm butchering his name, and I really apologize because he was talking about his excitement over having this whole mishmash together, how it's not like any other show. And I totally agree with that. I like that this one, it just feels wacky. And that's the part that I'm really loving about it, is that it really embraces the nutty nature of the premise.
Well, and it just, as you said, with the dialogue between themselves, Heatwave, Captain Cold have their just little banter back and forth. But then, you talk about that scene in the bar where he's like, I love the 70s. But even before that, when the thug, shows up, and is trying to, hit on, Sarah, and she's just like, you're really not my type, but your girlfriend might be. I laughed out loud with that one because I'm like, yeah, they're not dropping that whole side of her. That was awesome. And then even when she starts beating him up, they're like, she can handle it. This is 180. And then as more people start coming in, okay, now we got to help out, and it was, again, it's just that little bit of banter that they have, those couple of moments here, couple moments there, bam, bam. They fit already. They jive and they got a groove already. And a lot of times on a TV show, it takes time for the actors to have a comfort with themselves and a comfort within each other. This crew already has that. And I think that's a great thing to, actually coming from, episode 1 and 2, bam, right from jump, they're connected. And you can see them working together. You can see them being a team.
One of the great things about these shows, if you take a look at Arrow kicked this particular grouping off, and it's in 4 seasons now. So if you take a look at the amount of episodes that are involved there, plus you now throw in Flash, then you throw in this program, there's just a lot of continuity here that's been developed that I've really greatly enjoyed. Continuity, we talk about what's great about comics, continuity, as excited as I am about the Filmverse, and I love film, don't get me wrong, I'm not diminishing that. I love that TV is just as valid and viable a creative source and has, in many ways, more freedom to expand story because they have these rich, long seasons to develop them. I think Smallville really opened up the floodgates with this, with some of its bigger storytelling that it was doing. You know, how it had the beginning season opener and the finale that, like, you know, was finally the conclusion to what kicked off at the beginning of the season. I think these shows are embracing that and have taken it to the next level. And I'm really thrilled to see that happening with that. You know, on our next, Jim, we'll do a part 2 on this. And on the part 2, we'll talk about Arrow, The Flash, Gotham, and iZombie.
Oh, yeah.
Hello, Sean and Jim.
To Daryl, I'm the worst at leaving messages because I always think to do it and then I forget, and then you have a new episode that comes up. But I want to tell you guys that I love the show. I really enjoy it. Don't tell you that enough. You guys really entertain me, and you're always positive, and that's needed. So I need to hear that a lot of times when you love comics. I have a question. If the rumors are true and they are going to renumber Batman and start it again, I mean, not rechange it, but just start it from a new number 1 when Bruce Wayne comes back, what would you like to see Batman do? Like, either travel, like, back in the era where he would travel more and have adventures in other places and whatnot, or would you just prefer him to stay in Gotham, and would you want him to be more of a detective, or would you want him to kind of have more of a superhero type story with him, or just what would you guys want to see in terms of new stories with Batman? So let me know. And again, love the show. Bye.
So we started to talk about this a little bit before, but he's asking an interesting question that I don't know that we really touched. What would we really like to see happen if, because there'd be at this point there'd be a shift in continuity in the sense that Bruce has been through all this.
Right.
So where does he go from here? I am very interested in seeing what having a relationship with Julie and actually thinking about a future with her, because he was thinking about marriage with her and a future with her.
Yeah, he was planning on marriage and all that stuff. So, yeah, I'd like to see that, but I don't see it happening just because it is Batman, unfortunately. And I think he ends up getting a raw deal when it comes to relationships. But if they were to pursue that, I think that'd be a great way to go. Especially with the new starting point where Batman, I'd like to see Bruce try to hold on to some of the light that he had experienced. Mm-hmm. And so Batman not be pure shadowy and darkness. And I think Duke would be a great way for him to have a full-time Robin that needs a Batman. Whereas Damian could do Robin on his own. Damian can be his own hero. It would be neat to see Damian and Bruce doing stuff together and having that dynamic, but I think it would be one of those things where Duke would need Bruce more. And I think Bruce could get more out of Duke, out of his inexperience. So I think that would be a kind of a neat dynamic with Duke as his Robin. And, Bruce trying to hold on to the light that he was before, but can he? Or is he always going to shift back into the darkness? And me personally, I always like really good detective stories with Batman, where, especially considering Snyder's going to be on Detective Comics, I'd like to see that Sherlock Holmes style of Batman, where he's not just about beating the heck out of people. There is the strategery of Batman that makes him such a cool person.
Yeah, he would basically throw you out a window because of that word, but I love that part of Batman. I've actually liked the family aspect. One of the things you and I both enjoyed about the Batman and Robin series was the fact that it was exploring the concept of family. So I'd like to see Bruce try to make a relationship work. That's not to say that it will. I think one of the things we loved about Superman and Wonder Woman was not that there was some guarantee that those two would get married or that they would have a future. It's trying to see them make it work despite of their differences. So, would Julie even entertain that idea of being with a Bruce who is Batman? Would he tell her? He'd almost have to, right? If he was bringing her into that world, what would that mean? That kind of trust that would be there. I'm very interested in seeing if there's a potential for that relationship to go anywhere, that's assuming that she survived the events of issue 48.
Yeah. Assuming she's still alive,
sure,
which is not a guaranteed in the Bat universe.
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's some opportunities there to explore that. Alfred, I would like to know more about where Alfred's at now and where Alfred will be with Bruce coming back.
Yeah,
because
and
Alfred's been
Bruce
through a lot.
Where's Bruce going to be with Alfred?
Sure.
Is he going to be upset saying, hey, why didn't you tell me? Why did you keep this from me?
I think Alfred's explanation for that would be enough for Bruce. I don't think that's going to be a thing between the two of them. It's my concern is more, can Alfred get past everything he's been through? I think he can. You see, all these things are things I don't think that Alfred can't. Alfred will. But I'm interested in seeing the story.
Yeah.
So when I throw stuff out there, I don't really have a question mark. Is Alfred going to be fine in the end of this? Yeah, he's Alfred. But but I want to see that. Like, I like the journey. So, we all know where these things are likely going to head, but I want to see the journey. Julie, I want to see the journey. And here's the thing. If Bruce could have a successful relationship with a female and have that work, is that something you'd be interested in seeing?
Yes. Oh, definitely.
I would too.
Yeah.
Because it's different.
Yeah, and it's something, again, it's me being the Grim Reaper that I am. I'm like, okay, when's she gonna die? I would have that mindset going on, looking at every episode or every issue coming out, going, is this the one where Bruce's heart gets broken? Oh, sure. No, she's still alive. Good for him.
Sure. Yeah, and that's a part that is, I think, equally interesting to me. It's like,
Let me clarify. I don't want that to happen. I actually would like to see Bruce happy. And I would like to see the story that they tell with him balancing this relationship with her. And, if it ends, not have it end with her dying. Because I think the usage of a girlfriend, or a significant other or a partner in the Batman universe would be awesome. I think they could do a lot with it, especially when we know Snyder's on board for one of the titles, and we know he's a great writer and he can pull it off. You put another writer of equal value on the other book, and I'm assuming there's going to be that. They could really do some great stuff with the girlfriend, with the wife, with the partner, and how it's kind of the stuff we always threw out about with Lois being this great partner for Superman, because yes, she was human, but she was such a strong, powerful woman that her character and her personality made sense why this godlike man would want to be with her. I want to see that same type of relationship Bruce have with Julie, that you would say, yes, she should be with Batman. I think that would be a great story to tell. Unfortunately, this is Gotham, not Metropolis. Bad things happen in Gotham, and I'm worried about her.
Wait, can I say something that's definitely a lock? Because you keep alluding to that. I'm assuming this, I'm assuming that when it comes to what Batman titles are going to be. I can guarantee this. There is going to be a book called Detective Comics. There is going to be a book called Batman.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lock.
Yeah.
There's other things that are sketchy. There's going to be an Action Comics. There's going to be a Superman. There's certain titles that you can pretty much lock and guarantee. I think the question mark is there just going to be a Detective Comics and just to be a Batman? I think there's going to be more than that. I think that's the part where we can make assumptions that there will be more Batman titles other than that.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how that plays out with them.
What kind of Bat titles would you want?
I would love to see a Grayson book continue.
Yeah.
Because I'm really enjoying that right now. I want to see something with the Robins, the other ones.
Yeah.
Like, Damian, I want to see him wind up somewhere. Red Hood, I want to see him wind up somewhere. Tim Drake, I want to see him wind up somewhere. I don't want to just see Tim Drake in Teen Titans. That's, I kind of want to, here's the thing, Batman and Robin Eternal has made me even more interested in those characters. So I want to see them somewhere. Go ahead.
Here's where my mind's at.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to see Duke as Robin with Batman. I'd like to see Damian as Damian, son of Batman, and him continuing solo. I'd like to see Nightwing. Now, granted, I'd accept, of course, Grayson, but I'd like to see Nightwing written by, Tom King, because he's got the character down, and I'd like to see him, Grayson's awesome. I'm not knocking it. I think it's wonderful, but I think the way things end with the War of the Robins and everything, they're setting up for the return of Nightwing, and I'd like to see that happen. Tim Drake, I would like to see him on We Are Robins and have him take over the We Are Robins movement. Because I think that would be a neat thing with him working with the different Robins and just his style, etc. And lastly, the Red Hood Arsenal series continuing. I think that those two together are a great combo.
Sure. Batgirl?
Oh, yeah?
You know what I'd love to see? I'm going to say this right now. If you aren't relatively up to date on Batman and Robin Eternal, I'm going to put a little disclaimer here that I'm going to chat about a character. I want to see Azrael. I really want to see Azrael. Just based on where it may or may not go with him in there. But I really am digging Azrael. So I don't know. I love that they went back to the original concept, and I don't know. He's an interesting character. I've liked all versions of Azrael. I just think as a concept, it's really cool, and I'm glad that they've kind of gone back to the character's roots and brought him back. It's interesting. I was actually chuckling when Daryl left his message, more laughing at myself, not really him. Daryl's always so kind and generous, and like when he'll call up, he'll apologize for the fact that he hasn't called in a while. And I am terrible at calling podcasts that I listen to and enjoy, mainly because, we struggle to get our episodes out. It's one of the things, Jim and I have no plans anytime soon to stop doing what we do, but life has become a little bit more complicated towards getting this podcast out than it has in the past, and we definitely are devoted to at least 3 shows a month getting out there in the same quality and length and depth that you expect from Raging Bullets, which, considering the fact that, we're both working full-time, I'm taking classes in the evening now and stuff like that, isn't so easy to pull off. But that's, we do this for fun. And I listen to podcasts all the time driving into work. Some of my favorites, including, Daryl. Daryl's been a long-time friend, and when I get a chance to listen to the Taylor Network of podcasts, and especially ones that Daryl's on, it's always fun, like kind of catching up with an old friend. And I don't get to see Daryl anywhere near as much as I wish that I could. We just did recently an episode of Comic Timing. We did Comic Timing 176 that was just released. And we'd been talking for ages about getting together with Ian again. We've been doing podcasts with Ian for the last decade. I've done podcasts with Daryl before. Haven't done, something with him in a long time. I don't get a chance to do as much podcasting outside of our show, or contributing to podcasts outside of our show as I'd like to. So anytime, I'm always flattered when friends of ours will take the time, because I know how hard it is to do, to call into our show and contribute content and contribute their thoughts. Daryl Taylor is one of those people that I respect very highly and definitely consider a very good friend. And Daryl and I will text each other from time to time, just to catch up and see how we're doing, which I value the friendship quite highly, which is why I wanted to shout this out. And I want to shout out his podcasts. If you have not listened to the Taylor Network of podcasts, Daryl's done a great job of gathering friends together that have put together just a wide variety of comic book and pop culture podcasts that are linked and really are just cool people hanging out together, chatting about just such a diverse array of topics. I wouldn't do it justice if I shouted them out, but there'll be links in the show notes to the Taylor Network website. And I highly recommend that you check out his podcast community, just because it's made up of really quality, great people such as Daryl. And I don't know, they're people, most of them are people who have encountered at conventions, and some of them we've had on the show, been contributors. Donnie Salvo, for example. I'm not going to I start name dropping from the podcast. I'm going to leave people out. The people, start talking about Lori and other people on there. I'm starting to do it now, and I'm going to regret it, because I'm going to go afterwards. I should have mentioned this person, which is what I'm trying to avoid, is the people that are on his network, because his network's grown quite large at this point, that are people that I really respect, and I don't want to not leave some. I don't want this to be the Oscars where it's like I go off stage and I forgot to mention these three people, which was what'll happen with his network because it's made up of that many cool people. So just check it out. And thanks, Daryl, for calling as always. Good question, because that's an interesting piece of this puzzle. Where do we want this to go?
Hi, this is Scott Jameson, otherwise known as Skjam. It's been a while, so I thought I'd check in with you folks. I have a blog now, Skjam Reviews, and I thought I'd share a review I wrote a while back featuring one of the DC showcases. In specific, Showcase presents The Great Disaster featuring the Atomic Knights. Between the late 1940s and somewhere in the 1990s, one of the most pervasive fears of the American public was atomic war. For the first time in known history, humans were truly capable of destroying all civilization, perhaps all life on Earth. One of the ways people dealt with this fear was science fiction. After all, the SF writers had foreseen the possibility of annihilation well before such a thing was actually possible, and their stories would tell us the way things might fall out. At DC Comics, this became a loose theme called The Great Disaster. Unlike other showcase volumes, this one collects not one series or character's appearances, but a thematically linked set of stories dealing with the aftermath of atomic war. As such, it provides a wide array of notable comics writers and artists. The volume opens with a couple of stories about people traveling from after the Great Disaster to the present, or vice versa. This is followed by a collection of short shock stories, all titled The Day After Doomsday, presenting varied scenarios for what life after the bomb might be like. Perhaps the most effective of these is the Adam and Gertrude trilogy by Len Wein and Jack Sparling, but they all have their charms. Then we have the feature event, the Atomic Knight stories. These were all by John Broome and Murphy Anderson. World War III began in October 1986 and lasted less than a month, but wiped out much of human civilization, leaving a world without many animals or plants, and only a few pockets of humans struggling for survival. Into this world comes Sergeant Gardner Grail. When he joined the Army, they discovered he was exactly average, both mentally and physically, but during the war, he was trapped in a bomb shelter that collapsed from a near hit. The experience gave him traumatic amnesia, and only months after the disaster does he come to himself. Grail happens to be near a town named Durville that is relatively untouched by the war, which is to say it's a total wreck. It's come under the thumb of the Black Baron, so named because of his hair color, who has managed to corner the local food supply. By coincidence, Grail and a local school teacher, John Harold, discovered that the suits of medieval armor in the museum have become resistant to most forms of radiation, including the ray pistols used by the Black Baron and his men. There are 6 sets of armor, and soon Grail and Harold recruit twin ex-soldiers, Hollis and Wayne Hubbard, as well as scientist Brendan, who is feared and despised for being one of those who made the bombs that ruined the world. The last suit is deemed too small to be usable by any combat-ready man, so the Atomic Knight 5 set off. John's sister Maureen Harold, who is small enough to fit into the last armor, takes it upon herself to follow them and helps out in a tight situation. The Atomic Knights became the new force for law and order in the post-apocalyptic world, fighting bizarre radiation-spawned monsters, evil dictators, the remnants of Atlantis, and the mysterious mole people, who it turned out had actually caused the war. Bit by bit, they began to make Earth livable again. These stories were all about the cool ideas and were aimed primarily at children, so scientific plausibility and deep characterization were generally skipped. Brendan being reluctant to discuss his pre-war research and the Hobart brothers being jazz fans was about as much as we learned about them as persons. Speaking of jazz, the early 1960s habit of only depicting white people in comics was on full display on a visit to New Orleans, where names of black performers are dropped, but there are no people of color in town. Marine, of course, is often excluded from dangerous missions and seems to have no particular skill set beyond being feminine. She even muses to herself that she's just a woman. Perhaps appropriately, the last official Atomic Knight story from 1963 has her disguising herself as a boy and demonstrating some athletic talent. Next up are stories of the return of the gods. There's a one-shot about Atlas by Jack Kirby that doesn't tie into anything in particular, but shared a resemblance to a Skjam series also set after the Great Disaster. The Skjam series lasted long enough to get its own showcase volume, so the next set of stories are Hercules Unbound, which ran 1975 to 77. We open with Hercules bound to a rock, as he has been for the last millennium or so. Suddenly, the chains holding him snap. Could this mean that Ares, who treacherously bound Hercules there, is dead? No time to think about that, as a blind boy and his dog are battling sea monsters nearby. Kevin, the blind boy, explains that he was in Greece when World War III broke out, and he set out in a sailboat to see if he can get to his father, an ambassador to the Vatican. As it happens, Ares is in Rome, and very much alive, pitting the remnants of armies against each other for his own amusement. While Hercules triumphs against Ares' champion, the opening chapter ends in tragedy for Kevin. Hercules and his companions begin wandering the post-apocalyptic Earth, encountering mad gods and mutants. There's one person of color, a loincloth-clad hunter named Cerberus, not the aardvark, who's repeatedly referred to as Nubian. Yeah. The newfangled women's lib is mentioned a few times, mostly in association with Jennifer Monroe, a woman who was a model before the war and mostly serves as a damsel in distress for Hercules. Over the course of the series, it ties into OMAC, Kamandi, and the Atomic Knights, despite these series not being precisely in continuity with each other. The last couple of chapters return to the question of why Hercules was chained to that rock in the first place. It answers some lingering subplots, ignores others, and flatly contradicts some of the earlier characterization. These series had changed writers more than once in a dozen issues. After that are a few backups from Kamandi, and one last The Day After Doomsday Shock story. To close out the volume, we have a Superman story from 1983. By this time, it was looking less and less likely that we would actually have an atomic war in 1986, and even if we did, it wouldn't have the future 50s design aesthetic and cultural behavior seen in the Atomic Knight series. So, when Superman suddenly finds himself in the Atomic Knight's future, he is quick to point out the scientific implausibility of the scenario. Yes, this is hilarious coming from Mr. The laws of physics are just mild suggestions. Turns out it's a virtual reality scenario gone horribly wrong, with the moral being, the task before mankind isn't to survive an atomic war, it's to work in this world we're living in to make certain such a war can never begin. The story is also noble for giving Marine Hell a much more important role. Altogether, this is a mixed bag with something for many comic book fans, including rare stories. It's well worth a loan from your library, and if you're a collector, consider buying it. Once again, this is Scott Jameson, Skjam, and my website, Skjam Reviews, is at www.skjam.com. Thanks for your time, and you have a good evening. Bye.
It's funny, while Jim and I were listening to the review, we were also looking back through the website and just marveling at the fact that it's incredibly well laid out. The one thing that I really like as we're taking a look at through some of his book reviews, each one of them has at the end, and same thing with movie reviews, it has you may also like. So if you liked this particular book that he's reviewing, he has usually 3 others that are similar style or similar genre to recommend to you. He's very well read, and the movie choices he made are... So if you're a fan of comic books and pop culture, he's been doing this since December 2012, and it's been very consistent all the way through. It's a very well-produced site with huge archives that are searchable. So I just want to shout out his blog as being something... You and I were both just commenting at how interesting the blog looks. because he does books, movies, all the pop culture stuff that we'd really like, but very diverse tastes, which I like that actually, because I'm always looking for something new and interesting that I haven't caught before. And there's a lot on his site that I've never had the opportunity to read or view. And it's always helpful to have somebody point me towards something that that's been under my radar.
Yeah. And you mentioned how with the searchable, he's got a really good search engine within the website. I was actually able to pull up some of his Atomic Knight stuff that he was talking about there. So I was like, while I'm listening to it, I'm actually looking, going, "Oh man, that's cool," So and just looking the best, he's got a really cool, just massively loaded library of stuff he's gone through. This is a neat setup.
He also did the cool job breaking everything into categories too, which is nice as well. So there's a lot of different ways to browse through the site in a targeted fashion, depending on your interests. So I do want to shout out the site as being a very cool one, and thank him for calling in and sharing his review with us. Remember that if you would like to call in with anything, whether it's questions, comments, sharing a blog, a podcast, or a website that you have, anything of interest relating to comic books and pop culture, our show voicemail line is 1-440-388-4434, or Dr. Norge on Skype. We love having you part of the show, so please feel free to call in with anything.
Can Batman escape? One hint, the worst is yet to come.
I would like to remind everyone about our show website, ragingbullets.com. That's where you'll find news on our show updates on when the episodes are going to be released and where we're heading with those episodes. We do feed that into Twitter. We also feed that into our Facebook fan page. Besides the Facebook fan page.
Little goat people running around playing the flute. Yeah.
That's exactly, well, we're kind of wacky like that. Besides our Facebook fan page, we also have a Facebook group community that I say it so many times that I actually mentioned on the episode. That community is really theirs, and they have made it their own. I just want to shout it out because it's such a great group of people. If you're looking for a place to hang out and chat comics, that Facebook group community is the place to go. And my hat's off to just the kudos to the great people that are there that keep that place up and running. But that's on Facebook. Remember, if you are somebody who's stayed away from Facebook groups, maybe because of the email threads and things like that you get, you can control all that through the settings. So if you've never signed up for one of them before, you can get no email contact. You can just pop in when you want to. And that's really the way that I like to do it. I like to pop in, check and see what people are doing. I like it to, when I post in a thread, I like it to update me on what's going on in that thread. You have a lot of control over the emails you can get from Facebook groups. And that's something that I like to shout out to people because sometimes the defaults are a bit intrusive. So if you turn off some of the defaults, it makes it much more enjoyable to be a part of those Facebook groups. And this is a community well worth enjoying. That's why I wanted to make sure that people don't stay away from it because of issues like that. But such an amazing group of people. I just wanted to shout them out again. We are also available on Google+. Basically, anywhere you're looking for us in social media, we are there. James, we are sponsored this episode once again by DCBService.com. And in sometime this week, we should find out about our new
bundles.
Yeah, they have amazing deals up there, and I'm a big fan of collected editions too, and statues and things like that. It's nice to see what kind of new swag is going to be coming out. I just got that new Batgirl statue based on the new design for the character.
Oh, nice!
Oh, it's a gorgeous statue. It's the same size. I don't know if you've seen the ones that they just released. One for Arrow, the Flash, Gotham. It's Jim Gordon and Supergirl. These are a little bit larger than some of the other statues I've been getting, and the Batgirl's in that size range. And I really like it. The details are really incredible, and it's based directly on the comic book designs for the character. It's amazing how I did not like this costume at first, and now I really dig it.
Now you got statues.
I've got a statue of it now. But I'm finding that I'm really enjoying these statues. They really set off my office is kind of my man cave. And it's nice to have, I'm taking 2 classes now. And at night when I get home, it's nice to be able to do work here because it's kind of my environment, with all my swag and stuff in here. So that kind of stuff just kind of finishes off and makes it feel very personal. So I like the fact that I can pre-order those and get them at a discount and lock it into statues that I want, get them a little cheaper. That always helps. But and then I shouted out some of the collect editions I've gotten recently, like the Absolute Edition. To be able to get those at like 50% off is huge. It really makes a difference between getting that book and not getting it for me.
Yes.
I don't know if you run into that same boat, but full price for an absolute versus being able to get it half off really is a driving factor for me. So that's dcbservice.com. Over at instocktrades.com, I know I shouted out some of the cool stuff at the beginning of the episode, but in the latest releases, they have the Batman manga that just came out. This stuff I've been getting digitally, but they have it collected now, and it's the third volume of it. It's 45% off, only $8.24. This stuff is really great. They have the Swamp Thing trade paperback volume 7, Season's End, 45% off, only $9.34. So there's always cool stuff to browse through over at instocktrades.com. Anything that you might have missed. They have a great search engine over there too, so be sure to check it out. They have all kinds of deals that they're always running, and it's a great way to get trades and hardcovers at a discount. And that's really important, like if you're trying to get caught up on a series. You know, a lot of times, you buy 2 or 3 of them and you've got one for free by the time you look at those discount prices. And remember, orders of $50 or more give you free shipping. So that's instocktrades.com. I want to thank both of those sites for continuing to support our show. Our next episode, besides talking TV, we're going to catch up a little bit on Batman and Robin Eternal. So we will see everyone next week.
Bye.
On November 13th, Sean Whalen was asked to stop constantly talking about comic books. That request came from his wife. Deep down, he knew she was right, but he also knew that someday he would find someone that would talk to him. With nowhere else to go, he appeared at the home of his childhood friend Jim Segulin. Sometime earlier, Segulin's boss had requested that he shut up about his comic books and never speak of them again. Can 2 grown men put out a DC Comics podcast without driving each other crazy? It's Raging Bullets, the DC Comics fan podcast. With Sean Whalen as Dr. Norge, and Jim Segulin as the Sensei of the Whatnot and the Duke of You-Know. It's a spoiler podcast, so they will go in depth into the plot line, story twists, and whatnot of the comics they are reviewing. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you may better enjoy the show.